Okay. Hello, everybody. Again, obviously we're starting kind of at the end of the usual 1 hour window. For me, I think it's kind of good news because I thought it was going to be an hour or two later than this, but for everybody, that's still not a good one. And I do apologize for having to reset. It seems that the Book of Hours tag didn't come in. And as hilarious as I find it, the joke when people come in and say, "Oh, I didn't know this was a just chatting mod," I really think that too much of a good thing is, a danger. So I had to stop that before it happened. Um, I am completely lost. Something has changed on the Twitch settings. All right, here we go. But yeah, so there's a few things that are coming up actually. So I'm going to be recording another batch of Book of Hours for the weekend. We are now 2 days out of the last day of the Advent calendar, so we'll maybe take a quick minute to take a look at the Weather Factory website for that. And there's a really annoying encounter I had related to the latest article. I always find, for some reason, the like discords that are most likely to say some variation of "just be kind" are always the absolute worst once you have identified yourself as outside the group. So usually what happens will be a very, very minor thing becomes a very big thing precisely because of the way someone reacts. In this case, it was like a piece of AI art. Somebody's made a suggestion, a fair one, that to get more traction on YouTube, it helps to have an image and then give a link. And I know that that is true algorithmically for Twitter, but I also know that's probably not the reason my stuff doesn't get read. In any case, shared the image, and there's this guy who just like completely goes off on the use of AI art and leaves nothing on the comment on the article. So I do as best as I can to be polite and just say, "Hey, could you maybe focus on the article?" Um, and then there's a second person that piles on this, and like it's at this point here, it's like, what am I going to do, right? No artist was denied work because of this tool. Second of all, they also don't know what tool I used. I realize that everybody likes to assume that every single generative AI is the product of some kind of terrible theft. But the fact of the matter is that there are people who are specifically putting together models that are trained only on their own internal art or art that they have paid for. And I'm not entirely sure that people should be like. My view of this is that there are enough options out there now that we probably shouldn't be putting people on blast for using tools that are freely and legally available. I understand there's going to be a whole lot of copyright legislation and legal wrangling that goes on, and I'm not entirely going to be sad if it means that some of the companies that have been enjoying a very loose attitude to it wind up having to pay a lot of money. But it seems to me that because these people can't achieve what they want through conventional means, they just basically want to make it as miserable as possible for people. And I just don't think you should do that in a share your work section. So, as you might guess, this is something that did not fill me with the warmth of human kindness, milk of human kindness. Anyways. But this did lead me to wind up doing another book-related thing, which will translate into a different set of streams. I may wind up doing them on weekends, but I may also wind up doing them on YouTube. But I guess the simplest version of what I'm doing is there is a project to make sort of higher quality like free ebooks. So there are wonderful things like Project Gutenberg, which they'll give you access to public domain works, or at least ones that can be distributed for free online. And sometimes there is a very fine distinction to be made. For instance, Creative Commons, I think, would maybe be an example of this, where there are actually some restrictions in terms of how you can use it under Creative Commons. That's a little bit different from public domain. But anyways, Gutenberg is a wonderful project, but the drawback is that there's limits in terms of the quality of what you get from a project like that. They don't always make the most compelling reads. And I recorded a video to do this. I don't know when I'm going to publish it, but basically, as much as I like things like free and open source projects, I do need to admit that a lot of commercial options, a lot of the ones that people might prefer for ideological reasons, are very often not very suitable for the general public, simply because if you're working with volunteer labor, the volunteer labor is going to focus a lot on the things that they find interesting, and nobody's really going to work on the not so glamorous but very important parts that that get the job done, basically, that make it actually fun to use. So I always like giving the example. I know a lot of people love to thumb their noses at Apple, unfairly in my opinion, but Apple is a very popular computing company because their products work pretty intuitively. Essentially, the way you think it should work is the way it winds up working. And that is the product of hiring some very smart and capable people as far as user interfaces are concerned. And, again, that's maybe not as interesting to a computer expert as, say, implementing a new algorithm to shave a half of a second off of every query. But it's the thing that really matters to the user. So the drawback here is that it can often be the case that these wonderful in principle projects wind up being not so wonderful in practice, just because of the the differences in terms of priorities among the people participating in them. And again, that's not to say that, it would be nice if those projects could actually direct their resources a little bit better towards the things that matter. And I will certainly say, like, if you download Fedora Workstation now, just as an example, it's actually reasonably efficient and reasonably pleasant to use. There will definitely be cases, I know this because I've run into them, where like you'll run into something kind of naughty and then you'll go for, you'll look to try and find a solution, and the solution just winds up sending you down this terrible rabbit hole, and like all of a sudden your virtual machine's not working. So that's a problem, and I think that's going to be a legacy problem that they need to deal with, that a lot of the advice is just not very good now. But it can be, it basically, I want to like some of the free and open source stuff more than I actually do. But I'm very encouraged when there are projects that are specifically focused on the user and essentially making a better product than the rivals. So with that in mind, you can get a free version of, say, Arthur Conan Doyle, right? If I go on my iPad, actually, I'll do this. I have my tablet in front of me. Let's take a look for Sherlock Holmes stories on the Apple Books app. taking longer to load than I thought it would. All right, well, as much as I wanted to do that experiment. In any case, I guess the best example I can give you, like, this is true for published material as well. If you try to... I wonder if I can... Interesting. Sorry, it did occur to me that if I can't get the... I think this was an internet thing, so I wanted to make sure that I could actually search online. Yeah, that's more like it. Okay, so under Arthur Conan Doyle, so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Some of these are audiobooks. Let me just limit this to books, actually. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's French, actually. $10, $11, $12, $13, $14. Okay, so 15. Easily more than 20 here. You know, some of them are $1, some of them are $4. And I'm talking about book versions here, right? So you're not paying for the audio. You're, you know, you're really looking at somebody just taking a public domain text. But the thing is that those paid versions can actually sometimes be worth it, because the free version, you know, you can have optical character recognition, you can have any number of problems kind of getting in the way. So, long story short, I'm trying to get involved with this project, which is specifically about taking public domain works, putting them in nice EPUB formats, like the sort of thing that you would get if you were to download a proper ebook of something, you know, contemporary. And just basically make it so that you can have a really nice, you know, handsome edition of a public domain work in your library. And I'll try and stream that when I can. But I figure I've filibustered enough to let people file in. Let me just bring up my spreadsheet. Oh dear. All right, there we go. So we have a number of different things that we want to do. So we've got, we're going to host the salon. We're going to read Child's Compendium of Golden Afternoons, was it? Child's Treasury of Golden Afternoons. I noticed that we also put the Green Jasper tablet. Impulse, okay. Right, because I was trying to figure out a different impulse shelf at some point. Okay. That's going to take some thinking. Yes. Okay. So I'm going to keep employing the whisk towards the sweet bones. Before anything happens, we want to see who the guest is. And then once we have the guest, we'll be able to invite the various attendees. I should have kept better notes on... No, actually, come to think of it, maybe I don't want to take better notes because I've got so many books to go through anyway. Oop. We have more than enough for any of the items in the salon from... Actually, so everything but Faust. But I'm still a little reluctant to employ... actually, come to think of it. No, we still want to see what the salon produces memories-wise. So yeah, I'll use the Whist. I can actually probably just keep throwing Whist at the Sweet Bones without restoring it. I'll have some changes that I want to make to that eventually, but... Alright, the affair of the developments in the world beyond Brandkrug, drawing a new incident. This is the affair of the particular mystique. The Suppression Bureau has a growing interest in a recent fad for unconventional, often prophetic, religious movements. No laws have been broken, nothing sinister has come to light. All those movements are comfortingly solar in nature. There does seem to be something going on. Okay, so Yvette Southey was not one of the guests, so we'll be able to get the invitations written. An afternoon spent profitably reading newspapers to the curious, writing affectionate letters for the lonely, steering farmers through the requirements of the Ministry of Agriculture. I also said we were going to take a look at the Weather Factory website, and we didn't do that, so let's just take a look here. The Christmas market. Okay, so December 25th, something whose brightness lingers for a little while, even in the dark. Collect it from Reverend Timothy's Christmas tree. And then mobile wallpapers and a final concept piece for traveling at night. In the freebie section, let's take a look at that. Ah. Fancy. All right, let's get back to it. So we will we'll send directly for the guests. I could offer help with correspondence and arithmetic. There is no school in Brandkrug, and not everyone here knows their letters. The postmistress keeps the gate to the wider world. In her left hand is the lightning, which is to say the telegraph, and in her right the thunder, which is to say the only telephone in Brandkrug. Before her lies the cash register, which accepteth the greater currency and returneth its lesser children. Patience, thus the mountain awaits the fall of the snow, thus Monday awaits the death of the weekend, thus the postmistress waits for me to purchase the necessary stamp. Stamp, envelope, send. Dr. Yvette Southey. Playwright, philologist, psychoanalyst. She is as happy with questions as with answers. So let's talk to her about the affair of the particular mystique. Hello there, got a moment? The funniest thing, I keep getting speaking invitations from this odd little outfit, Church of the Ivory Dawn, and, well, you'll laugh, librarian. They've made up their minds I'm their appointed leader. I've made up my mind I'm not, but they're pretty insistent. They've got a bee in their bonnet about my family folklore. Alright, so Yvette has not gotten any of her winter texts yet, so we can probably give off a simple, which was, I don't think it was Introduction to the Histories, but I remember there was at least one for winter. Kionan Abydos is a, oh, there we go, Lady Ava's Repose. You know that immortals, long, can't have children. Bad things happen if they try. What if a pre-immortal had children? Would there be anything special about those? Ivory Dawn likes to think so. I like to think not. And if I say anything more about that, I'll start to feel like a fool. Thanks, librarian. All right, so we can focus on the invitations again. And there we go. So I gotta remember who was interested in Zuthi Zidane. So it was Azita, Morgan, and Serena. Well, I can see what Serena wants for curiosity. I'll just maybe write down some notes. I can't remember if I had a preference in terms of who I was going to help with that or not, but that's kind of secondary at this point. All right, an afternoon spent profitably reading newspapers to the curious, writing affectionate letters for the lonely, steering farmers to the requirements of the Ministry of Agriculture. All right, Aaron Peel has arrived. Yvette Southey has got her question answered. I'll wait till I get another 6 pence before I hit the collect button. All right, Douglas has arrived. Eason's arrived. It's been a while since we've had him to Brandkrug, or Hush House, rather. Peter Ecdistis. By the way, one touch that I noticed that I like, so in this case, it says here, Serena prefers forage, food, and drink, so you'll see the little heart here. That's true for Aaron and Douglas Moore. But what I think is interesting about Eason, right, you take a look at this. So he prefers moon food but sky drink. So there's a little different icon, which I thought was kind of neat. I should see what the preference for, or I should have seen what the preference for Yvette Southey was, because I believe that is a doesn't want to make a fuss one. Okay. I think we're ready for lunch. Bring light back to the mirrors where once Lady Ava held court. So, we are serving Dr. Aaron Peel, exile. Oh, sorry, before we do that, we want to take a look at the unfinished lark. Zidane, the silly boy, was not only using unsanctioned alloys, he had also happened on a trove of roost secrets. There is good reason that the Aviform Hours guard the roost so jealously. These secrets are seeds of strife and scandal. If we want to preserve the order of the Mansus, it is essential that they be discreetly returned. I think I know where to find them, but arranging a safe audience with their owners will be much more challenging. Anything on Roost or on Path and Pilgrim? And here it says one book might make Serena reconsider. So I'm gonna I want to make sure that I haven't made the note already. It's funny that I didn't. I feel like I would have made another another note on this one, but apparently I haven't, so Okay, so I have some ideas about books that that might work for this, but I'm also a little curious about this idea that there's a book that'll change her mind. In any case, let's get the Salon in the Hall of Division. So we're inviting Dr. Aaron Peel, exile, riddlemonger, thunderskin devotee, I'd rather say confidant, impeccably dressed, but always in dark clothing so the stains don't show. Dark the dressings too, at his ankles and his wrists. I won't take a seat. It's kind of you to offer. It would be unkind of me to accept. Detective Illuminate Douglas Moore, Detective Illuminate of the Suppression Bureau, a stoic but weary fellow. His dearest wish is to move to Chingford and grow roses, but the buggers won't let him retire. Mr. Eason Fekri, formerly, Eason was a healer. He was not human. He was Secretary Salvant of Hush House, but not all at the same time. Fussy, kind, famously foul to look upon. Mr. Peter Ecdistis, musician, mystic, impresario. Ecdistis was a dancer once. One cannot see him without knowing it. The wound in his thigh keeps him from the stage, but his every movement still has the cadence of a prayer. And Dr. Serena Blackwood, one-time librarian of Hush House, one-time librarian of the Invisible Serapeum in Alexandria, and currently what exactly? Serena is close-mouthed, but I know that she has worked with the St. Ronwen Trust. And they will be enjoying Kedgeree, a wonderfully versatile dish favored by breakfast by the sons of the lark and for supper by the daughters of the owl. Pickled mackerel, pickling is a kind of afterlife. What comes after afterlife? Game chips, long before fish and chips, these went crunchily with game. Ideally, you'd want bread sauce and bread crumbs to complete the ensemble, but honestly, it's hard enough not to just stuff these directly into your mouth. Stargazy pie, we are all in the gutter, but some of us are looking at the stars. Wild, Lady Windermere's fan. And finally, Cornish honey cake. Under no circumstances should this ever be confused with Devonshire honey cake, which everyone in Brankrug could instantly identify as an inferior variation. My guests take their places for lunch. Keep an eye on the salon as it progresses. You will need to add soul cards to encourage the conversation to flow. Different guests will need different soul cards. The more guests, the longer the salon will last. Lunch and supper last longer than less formal salons, allowing you an extra interaction between your guests. Lively conversation. Say something witty. Eason and Ecdistis are discussing needleworking techniques for stitching sigils of healing into closing wounds, or of guidance into costumes. Stitching and binding. I feel like Douglas Moore would also be a participant in that conversation. Alright, so it looks like that already turned into a combined coin. Ask about dreams. Eason needs to travel to Zurich and wants to know whether Douglas, cousins of the Duties, might arrest him. Douglas works through what he calls his abominations checklist. Regretfully, he tells Eason that, yes, they probably will. He suggests that Eason not tell him which train he's Sorry, I want to read that again. Eason needs to travel to Zurich and wants to know whether Douglas, cousins of the Duties, I wonder if there's supposed to be an apostrophe here, might arrest him. Douglas works through what he calls his abominations checklist. Regretfully, he tells Eason that, yes, they probably will. He suggests that Eason not tell him which train he's catching. Ask about dreams. Aeson and Serena reminisce about their time at Hush House in the days of its power, when the winds were leashed to keep the seas safe, when the Fine Takers still responded to the words of the Covenant. Reasoned discussion. Raise a complex question. Add a whist card. This should be the last trip to the Sweet Bones tonight. Serena and Aaron debate the best and safest lighting conditions in which to read texts recorded in the Inks of Revelation. Lots of lantern in this. Say something witty, add a shaft card. Douglas has been to a performance of Kirley's Ceaseless for assessment of oniric hazard, not for pleasure, but he took Mrs. Moore, free tickets is free tickets, and both enjoyed it. Douglas much more than they expected. Agdesis is much more than happy to discuss Kirley's work, or possibly Kirill's work. Invite a challenge. Also, it did occur to me that there's no reason why I shouldn't be reading... Oh, well, that's obviously not going to work. It did occur to me there's no reason why I shouldn't have read A Child's Treasury of Golden Afternoons. I was going to be using that no matter what, and the memory that I get isn't one that can be replaced. So a little silly of me to spend so much time not using it, but we have more than enough in terms of elements of the soul. Edge a conquest. Douglas and Agdesis speak of the Agdesis Club. Agdesis Club where Agdesis once worked and which Douglas had a hand in closing down. Douglas is unrepentant, but also regretful. A lively meal concludes. My guests leave happy. You've gained an additional potent memory. Chances are it'll be one that we already have, but... Alright. That worked out well. Alright, so let's load it all up. So I don't think there's anything to be done with these folks. Lively Salon, just to remind us we can't do another one. Satisfaction, which will go away if we don't set it aside. Drums and Dances, Weaving and Not Working, Inks of Revelation, Sacrosolus Invicti, Purifications and Exaltations, and Stitching and Binding. Okay, so let's preserve the Satisfaction. Well, I could preserve the Gossip as well, I suppose. Is there an argument for one over the other? Let's hang on to the Satisfaction. Alright, from there, I did have a little bit of a checklist of skills that I wanted to level up to certain areas, and I should already have that written down. So did I already commit the level 6? I did not. Okay. Okay, so Crack Track is now at level 2. Auroral Contemplations, I think, wound up at... Right, okay. So Auroral Contemplations is good. So I think it was going to be Auroral Contemplations, Discipline of the Hammer, and Ragged Crossroads. Okay, so Ragged Crossroads was going to go to level 5, and Disciplines of the Hammer was going to go to level 4. So the first question here would be, do I have any Edge, Winter, or Forge to work with here? I don't think so, but let me confirm that. Okay, so nothing on my illumination track to take a look at. Next up would be Skolakosophy, so I think that would be Lockworks and Clockworks and Putrefactions and Calcinations, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so that's for Pearl and Tide. Skolakosophy was going to get a 3 and a 4. Okay, so Putrefactions and Calcinations is Moon and Winter, which again, I don't think any of these provide. Okay. And then I guess that would be Lockworks and Clockworks, which, well, at least that I have Sky with, so I could use Sacrosolus Invicti and Stitching and Binding. Well, and that brings Lockworks and Clockworks to a level 4. Cool. I don't really have any memories to do this with, but... Well, I have the Storm. And I have the Occult Scrap. Okay. I do have something I can work with then. So Lockworks and Clockworks will get the Storm, we'll give it the Occult Scrap, we will employ Stitching and Binding. Shapt. I'm no expert, but I'm no dabbler either. And again, it's kind of a free-for-all as far as using elements of the soul are concerned, so I'll just read the paper whenever I can. Okay, so the last one was Sand Stories. Sand Stories was going to level 4, so that needs Rose and Moon. Again, these don't help anything. Oh, actually. We could have also used that one for Lockworks and Clockworks. But yeah, so basically we can get Lockworks and Clockworks to 4, and then the rest of this is just bringing up whatever low-level skills happen to come by. I might as well do that now. Or maybe not. Yeah, let's get the... I think I'll get the ones that I want to place on the tree done first, and then we'll move the rest up. Alright, the skill is now level 3. Its power aspects have also increased. So we'll take this. We will read the paper, investigate the object. You won't use this up or consume it by doing this. And daybreak. Memories fade, assistance departs, but the soul is refreshed. So I don't... Again, I've got more elements of the soul than I know what to do with. So we'll start with help with letters here. I could offer help with correspondence and arithmetic. There's no school in Brandkrug, and not everyone here knows their letters. Today, though, the focus is really going to be on generating memories and leveling up the various skills. So we're going to get a Ragged Crossroads from a Child's Treasury of Golden Afternoons fairly soon. We'll use that to level up Ragged Crossroads because I believe that was going to go to Skolakosophy. No, that was going to go into Illumination. So that one needs a 5. So Mr. Kill always enjoys a chance to catch up with me. If you don't choose a topic, Mr. Kill will offer help as a friend. Now, I'm going to take a little bit of a scattershot approach here, but again, this is mostly just because I've got more elements of the soul than I know what to do with. So I'm going to generate basically every memory that Mr. Kill doesn't generate. So Secret Thresholds would be an example of this, and we'll read The Temptations of Architecture. And this is partly because I want to recognize that in addition to the main skills that I'm leveling up, I have sort of this batch of freebies set off to the side. So I basically want to have some skills that at the end of the day I can just sort of cram away into some other level increase, and not have to, just not really have to think about, what time of day am I going to, decide, oh, okay, everything's ready to, everything has to be in place. Confounding Parables would be an example of that. I can't remember if we did 108 or not, but we're doing that now. That's for the Confounding Parables. Patterns. Raptures of Forculus. Heinz Assault we can work with. Alright. Satisfaction, regrets, gossip, foresight, intuitions, contradictions. Right, I'm already reading something with Ixos. We already have Earth Signs. We don't have Savage Hymns. Okay, and then we can also take advantage of the phonographs to get some others. So we've got the Cheerful Ditty and the Beguiling Melody. Actually, this would have been good for a Confounding Parable as well, although I haven't run out of books to get unique memories from, so I think we're okay. The other thing I could try and do is generate a name day riddle, I suppose. I'll worry about that later. Alright, Cloudy Day doesn't do a whole lot for me. That would actually probably be the better argument for... that would be a better argument for turning that into a named riddle, actually. So, Mr. Kill, Ryan Spry doesn't mind stopping for a gossip. Let's see if I can get away with it. So, we add the clouds, we add Edicts Liminal, we add Tryst. Sure, let's go for it. Theoretically, I could do the same with Old Moment as well. So again, long-term plans would be to move up Lockworks and Clockworks, but at this point, I'm kind of happy to use whatever. Nothing's history when first it happens. So there's a replacement occult scrap. I don't know if we'll have enough for or no, with the sky we'll definitely have enough for the lockworks and clockworks. Another thing that I can do to make my life a little bit easier is I can actually get the sight and the touch as well. So let's take a look at the Lady Tryphon painting. Investigate this object. You won't use this up or consume it by doing this. I've carried a memory like a flambeau safe through the mazes of night. This will complete once dawn has come. So kind of a busy day already. But this is partly just me recognizing that I have a whole bunch of memories with no real purpose. We'll use them to level things up, obviously, but I kind of want to clear them out without getting too distracted from my main goal in terms of getting some specific things to the Tree of Wisdoms. One of the reasons I want to do that is I want to make sure that I have enough elements of the soul for the salons, but I also, where I can, want to level them up. So like, there's no reason why this Wist should stay Wist 1. I really should build those up to some kind of higher level. Oops. Let's try that again. All right. A child's treasury of golden afternoons. Once upon a time, a very bad man encoded very bad secrets into the charming illustrations of a book of charming stories. Wake the pictures and you will see. Lord Jacob Gristwood, surgeon, ethnologist, philanthropist. There is no proof that he ever kept children in hutches beneath his bed. There is no proof he vivisected cats at dinner with his penknife. The Suppression Bureau keeps its secrets. Here's your paint, whispered the wolf to the pale girl. Here is your knife for scraping, and here is your face. So, 2 sharps. I believe we're going to use that to level up Ragged Crossroads. And Newman, Merciless Alteration. The fundamental flaw, the irresistible shortcut, the hate that heats, the change that mars, the scar that opens. These are the foulest histories. Any librarian can use this to establish a history and complete the game, but the artist and the archaeologist can win a particular victory. So I'm going to add this to my notes. I think we just have one more, if I'm not mistaken. Or actually, I think we may already have Back into Balance. So... and that's... So there's really nothing for me to do with Merciless Alteration except use it as some kind of an input into the levels, but we haven't quite decided what we'll use it for yet. Yes, so we did read The Sky and the Scar. Okay, so all of the texts with Newman are done. This means... I think I had suspected this before, but we've got this confirmed now. I have 2 options for... I usually like to go for the specific histories for the character that I'm playing. So my options here are Rose, Sky, and Winter, or Scale and... Or sorry, Rose, Sky, Scale, and Winter. Those are the 4 that I want to be working towards. All right, let's think about next steps. Well, I only want Ragged Crossroads to 5, so let's gather up the edge that I can. I'm going to have to do this sort of one step at a time. Let's do the Leonine Tantra just so I can get out of the way, because I actually don't think we have that many edge memories. And it did occur to me I haven't been looking at the films that much. I think the only one that we currently have is Revelations. Yeah, Colors in the Liver is Revelations. All right, that was quick. Oh, we can also do Torg's Cleansing. purge myself of harmonious resonances, accruing some personal edge. It won't be pleasant. All right, lots of memories here. The Temptations of Architecture. The antiquarian and Nyctodromus Ambrose Westcott writes of the dangers of doors, with particular reference to a house in the Bounds named Treowyn. No doubt they have come to regret the ambitions of their winding stair, even now in Treowyn. A silver sea is unwisely visible from a rash window. Westcott explains that the wheellocks, the charge holders of Treowyn, have had recourse to dramatic measures to prevent Oneiric encroachment, removing the entire top floor of the building. Nevertheless, he writes, the business of the Moon Hall has begun to touch the other business of the house. So again, we don't necessarily have purposes for these yet. Some of these will be helpful with like the knock, but right now this is more, I'm getting this stuff because I can. Glimmerings, an anonymous prison diary written by a dreamer convicted of Oneiric irresponsibility and confined to the Cucurbit. The prisoner is plainly terrified and bewildered by their situation, and has been unable to wrangle a coherent explanation out of anyone. But the dreams keep coming, and they keep writing them down. Snow, broken mirrors, half-heard sky music, flowers of white, red, and black, a blood-streaked winter dawn, the most notorious signifiers of Oneiric risk, fantastically vivid and detailed. No wonder they were locked up. Their final recorded dream is of a worm jewel beneath Brankrug Isle, which they open with a key carved from their finger bone. The Lake Fusino recordings of the folk dances of the Fusine marshes, the wailing of flutes, the roaring of drums, cries like birds lost in the marshes. These are the songs the sisters sang to the witch, that the Thunderskin roared to the sky, the songs with which the Dwendrzons of the Mansis keep their vigil. Once heard, they are not forgotten. So I think we'll probably handle the Lockworks and Clockworks first at this point. The Raptures of Forculus, the first volume of Abbot Geoffrey's hypothetical theological debates in the Socratic mode. If Janus were an hour, Forculus might be counted among his names, but that door remains closed, and Forculus is not. Geoffrey discusses the signs that mark doors, which might permit or forbid access to certain thoughts and dreams, speculating carefully on which of the sanctioned hours might teach or govern each sign. The Crossing to Noon. The mystic Garcia Sauri gives a picturesque account of the adventures of Franklin Bancroft, Prince of Wines, and Ava de Wolf, the Pale Lady, on their way to the hidden island of Noon. For a long time, the Blackbone pondered her next move until the moon dared to peep from behind a cloud, and the prince completed the composition of his third sestina, but the lady met the blind gaze of its open pores, waiting for the tide. Garcia Sauri acknowledges in an epilogue that it is widely known that Ava in fact tragically drowned herself and her twin infant granddaughters without ever making such a journey. But he adds contemptuously, it is also widely known that the city unbuilt will so remain, that only one history is ever written, and that Janus is a Mansis prank. 108. Ava de Wolf discourses on the fifth history, and particularly on those who are said to have passed over from it, the great hooded princes, the Knocklong, who ascended under the Mother of Ants, but now, so Ava claims, honor the Horned Axe. The great hooded princes call their library the Tomb of Lies, and this has given rise to a foolish tradition that the princes are habitual liars. Of course, in fact, truth flourishes when lies are slain. On the other hand, the princes do not say knowledge is power, but rather power is knowledge. Ava has, to her regret, never visited the library. She notes that it is said to be west of the Lion and north of Victory, and suggests, although the princes are generally associated with India, their library might be further east. Those indignities perpetrated by the deceitful fraternity of Obliviots. It is not clear whether CROD, who is identified only by his initials, was in fact an initiate of the Obliviate Order of Immortal Adepts. He wrote in the 16th century, after the order, if he is to be believed, had passed the height of its power. 58. That they did claim inheritance of the traditions of the House of Leith, but that they have disregarded both its most sacred and its most beautiful ceremonies where they are not found convenient. 59. 71. The Glassfinger toxin is no mere assassin's convenience for the Oblividiots to confine to the disposal of their enemies. It has higher uses. Certainly it is a great matter of winter, but I have already outlined the technique by which it may be fitted for its ultimate destiny. The Singlefoot Songs. Father Stanislav John Schaller, priest and diplomat, writes of his time on the slopes of Huashan near the Grove of Green Immortals, but never too near. Schaller's relations with the grove are cautious. It's a library of the tree, but under the hand of the hour named Applebright. In time, however, Schaller comes to be more sympathetic to the Applebright, which he suggests causes harm only when so invited. The Singlefoots of the title are one-horned, one-footed hill things with sweet but powerful voices, powerful enough to open the mountain. The Singlefoots sometimes trample pilgrims, sometimes heal them, sometimes coerce them to enter the mountain and become Singlefoots. Schaller explains that when he found this last becoming too tempting, he decided to return to his homeland. Opening the Sky, an unusual recording of Varro's Opening the Sky, composed for the coronation of the new king, Henry IX. The record bears the suppression stamp Expunge. The first movement is soft, autumnal. The second, unsettling, febrile. The third is bright, soaring, rapturous. The fourth movement is glassy, slithering, a tintinnabulous icicle rattle. The fifth returns to the theme of the third, bright and rapturous once again, but it is a choral movement. It becomes apparent, though, that these are much, much too pure and high to be human voices. They recall birdsong, they recall the sweep of the windswept sky, blue turning black at the edge of the higher heaven, and they wrench the heart in a direction that the Bureau does not permit. All right. So I guess we'll wait the 1 second before we make some decisions. A handwritten card tucked into the frame reads Lady Tryphon, a very old portrait in the Byzantine style. A handwritten card tucked into the frame reads Sequester on site, GC. Alright, so we've got a site as well. So I guess in this case we're going to want as many Forge and Winter memories as I can muster, and these will be the ones that aren't unique. The other thing that I'll do is I'll actually prep that last move on Lockworks and Clockworks. So the obvious one to me seems to be the Cheerful Ditty and the Savage Hymn. And then the Confounding Parable. Another fruit plucked from knowledge's tree. Improve the skill to level 4. So the reason I chose those specific ones are because they are ones that I can get through the phonographs without reading the same thing again. So in this case, we'll do the Invisible Opera. And then we can get the Confounding Parable by reading A Tower Rises or A Tower Falls. I think we did A Tower Falls most recently, so we'll do A Tower Rises this time. And we'll need VAC for that. Alright, so like I said, Winter Edge and Forge are my main goals right now. But I think most of my Winter Edge and Forge have already been accounted for. Not Hindsight, though. I think I might have done the Hissing Key recently, but we'll use health. Okay. Trying to keep some kind of balance in terms of the elements of the soul that I'm using. I think we're on to the War of the Roads now. Possibly the Iron Book. I'm going to settle for War of the Roads. Again, Winter, Forge, and Edge. We're already getting a Fear. Definitely unhatched hymns. And I think that's it. Hang on. Yeah, I already have the contradiction. Okay. So with that in mind, that should take us about as close as we're going to get to... Hello, Wanderer Down. How goes librarianship? Is it secret? Is it safe? Yes, it's very safe. Given our Christmas reading about the requirements of not a constant state of happiness, but contrasts. For those of you, by the way, who have not seen Marathon Man, I highly recommend it, and definitely just before a trip to the dentist. All right. So Sand Stories, we need Rose and Moon. So let's start working on those. I'm really running out of options here. All right, I think that's going to have to do it. Haven't really left a whole lot for Mr. Kill to do, but I think I can live with that. Dead men don't tell no bloody tales. Well, who'd listen? So what we'll do here, the Foresight may get overwritten by some of the other Foresight I'm working on, but we'll see what we can get before... we'll see what we can get before the books are finished reading. Have you played The Lady Afterwards? No, I have not. I own a copy now, but as with most tabletop experiences, I find them discrimination against the lonely. So I want to be kind of careful in terms of talking about it for the simple reason that I have a sample of about like one personal connection, like so somebody that I know reasonably well, and then I have sort of a smattering of responses from like the community in general. The personal one expressed some disappointment because I think what they were looking for was like a proper RPG source book. So like you're not going to find stats for the Watchmen, for instance, or maybe the Colonel or the Lionsmith or something like that. And I can see why there would be a lot of demand for that, but I'm not so sure that that's I'm near certain, based on the reaction from the person I know, I'm near certain that is not going to be what the tabletop experience is. However, I think there is a reason why they made it the way that they did. I think the effort behind it was not necessarily to make just another tabletop product, but specifically make sort of an event. And so I think if you go into it looking at it as like a one-off adventure, sort of using the Call of Cthulhu system, which is a little bit more like an Evening of Murder, right? Where you're sort of like, I mean, it comes with a scented candle and a playlist and things like that, right? And I think there's some big surprises in the adventure. I get the impression that as long as you go in with those expectations, it's very satisfying. But I think this is the challenge, right? That if you are presenting a certain tabletop product, there's going to be a bit of a challenge in terms of what people's expectations are. And so that's kind of why I'm hedging my bets a little bit, because obviously that's quite a costly product if you get the deluxe package. But I think it would depend on the games that they're coming from. If they're going from the story side, that makes sense. Yeah. So again, I very deliberately have not gone in and messed with it because I'd really like to see, I don't know, like maybe at work or something like that, to just put up a somewhat cryptic invitation to Alexandria. But like I have my role playing experience is not zero, but I do have just sort of these very narrow sort of I've kind of these like little narrow bursts of role playing experience, and like I haven't really been part of a campaign that's lasted all that long. I have probably read more role playing books than I've played. And so to a certain extent, I really don't feel like I'm in a good position to speak with some kind of authority on the systems. But I do know, like, one of the role-playing systems that has been most fascinating to me is Traveller, both from the perspective of its role in history, as well as just sort of its system as a whole. My understanding of Traveller, and just also like, FASA started off writing modules for Traveller, for instance, and obviously then they went off to do their own IP like BattleTech and Shadowrun and so on. But I think so. On one end of the spectrum, I think you have something like Traveller, which I think in its purest sense is more of a system that is about building your own science fiction setting rather than building its own. Now, to be clear, it is obvious that Traveller does have its own setting. In fact, it's a very, it's a very well established and long running environment. But I think the idea here is that you were given enough of a formula, particularly like I've got the Traveller 5th edition, like the Mark Miller one, which is a completely incomprehensible book. I really don't know what happened there, but it is a very confusing document to read, and I'm going to master it at some point, but my god, that is not an easy one. Oh, I just remembered I should generate a little edge in winter here. I could release it to the waves or the winds or the sands as it prefers. But yeah, anyways, not to belabor the point, but yeah, so that's sort of one of the polls that I'm sort of looking at. Well, I have two, right? I have the Mongoose one, and then I have the Mark Miller one. I believe they use two different systems. Let me just take a look here. There's also a GURPS one. I haven't tried the GURPS one. Actually, I haven't tried any of them, but I have, in terms of documents, I have... okay. So the Mongoose one... Okay, so it seems to be here that it just uses D6s. Yeah, Traveler uses 2 6-sided dice to resolve most actions. Fair enough. So that's the Mongoose one. And then the Traveler 5 core rules by Far Future Enterprises. Huh, also 6-sided dice. Interesting. Okay, yeah, no, both systems use 6-sided dice, and this one, however, recommends 10. I don't know how much of that is a... Yeah, I don't know if that's like a general recommendation or like, again, I'm trying to read it. But yeah, it looks like, so the one that I've been spending the most time reading is the probably the 2d6 one, the Mongoose one. Anyway, where I was trying to go with it was, obviously, when you come from something like that, where you have a... Oh, fair enough. But yeah, so like obviously, you know, you have some systems, or like GURPS would be a good example of this, where again, it's supposed to be a system to accommodate everything. Or you have something like Dungeons & Dragons, where part of the appeal is lots of different dice. But on the other hand, there's also sort of a culture of getting these adventures that you would run people through. So, yeah, I mean, I would say that if you are looking for something to build your own experiences with, then The Lady Afterwards would probably be more of a disappointment. But I will also say that keeping expectations aside, it does seem that the consensus on the subreddit has been that it is a worthwhile experience. But I mean, the problem with that one is that there's a selection problem. Like I haven't, you know, these are people probably already inclined to like Weather Factory stuff, and well, no, then again, like there's a lot of complaint. It's actually, I tried specifically not to engage with the ones that are complaining about the Weather Factory game. So I guess it's not necessarily going to be all positive stuff. So yeah, no, I don't know. It feels like a mainstream opinion would definitely be that that Lady Afterwards is worth it. Oh, I wasn't expecting to get a hindsight. All right. Named a riddle. Is this the way to the wood? But perhaps the wood is not a suitable place for a librarian. All right. So this creates... actually, it's not too awkward. We still have some time. I'll just wait for it to go on sale, and you get the physical one. That's the one that's worth it. Although I guess if you get the digital copy, that lets you know whether or not it's your kind of thing, and then you can decide to spring for the big one. Oh, got another foresight. All right. So we'll keep talking with Mr. Kill. But the time has come for us to decide what we want to put our points towards. So I'm a little scattered in terms of what I want to do here. So let's just catch up. Okay, so putrefactions and calcinations will eventually get to level... Oh, that's already 3. Okay, so Skolakosophy is good to go. The Sand Stories will be the one that I want to take to 4, but we don't have anything relevant to that right now. Well, not entirely true. We have the Salt, the Contradiction. But the real focus right now would be Ragged Crossroads and Disciplines of the Hammer. So, we'll take Ragged Crossroads to 5 by hook or by crook. Go for the Salt and the Bittersweet Certainty, and then we can restore those. Okay, we've got more than enough whist, so we'll throw that at it. Alright, so satisfying to have come so far. Improve the skill to level 5. So we're going to be 1 short for what we need for Disciplines of the Hammer, but I can live with that. For Bittersweet Certainty, I think I can get away with just using... Oh god, I don't even remember which one of these. Can't be Quenchings and Quellings, but... yeah. I wish I remembered which one it was. If it's Snow Stories, I don't think I'm going to have what it takes. Alright. I don't think it's worth spending that much time looking for it, so we'll just do it the old-fashioned way and read the book. But yeah, I'm going to want the Salt and the... sorry, the Salt and the Bittersweet Certainty. And then the Loss will still help me, so we will toss another Sand. If I cast an object into the sea, it will be lost, perhaps irretrievably. Alright, the Leonine Tantra. In the most notorious translation of the Leonine Tantra, Ashley Phillips is listed as the translator, but their existence is explicitly denied in the prologue. This confusion is characteristic of books which mention the Great Hooded Princes. The Tantra describes elliptically the Great Hooded Princes and the multitudinous ways in which they influenced wars against foreign invaders of the land of the Great River, although in a sense they were also invaders. Lands can be created, not as children are created, nor as words are created, but as weapons are created. The Great Hooded Princes learnt to create lions from their spyings on the affairs of the hours, and not all lions now serve the Golden General. Alright, so we can get to work on the Bittersweet Certainty. The cleansing has left my skin burning, my teeth throbbing. The chorality rumbles beneath the membranous surfaces of the waking world. Obviously a couple duplicates there. The Hissing Key, an account of the ascent of the hour called the Mother of Ants by the Bossk scholar Mek of the Theban branch of the House of Leith. Mek is not sympathetic to the Mother of Ants, who he calls the Milk Thief. He reviles her for her part in the death of the Seven Coils, which he presents as a treacherous conspiracy. The Milk Thief conspires with the Legion Echidna and the hour-to-be called Chiliarch, now more generally rendered as Colonel, to unseam the Seven Coils with feathers and drown her in salt. The Colonel thus ascends to hour status. The jealous Milk Thief, once the Colonel's priestess, seduces Echidna into lending her the Hissing Key to enter the Mansis through the Savage Door, beginning her own ascent to name and ultimately hour. Codex Acephali, sometimes called the Book of the Clean Skull. The book contains accounts of enlightenments available through the gradual surgical removal of the lobes of the brain. It becomes clear that the processes described are mostly allegorical or metaphorical descriptions of winter techniques for less revolting occult work. Even the metaphors are pretty horrible, though. The author explains adaptations of these techniques with sufficient winter aspect to harvest a mysterious substance described as the rags of the final bone from the remains of almost any animal. A Tower Rises. The phonograph is packaged in glossy card and the bright pink. The bright pink of a dog rose, with the words "A Tower Rises" in 9 languages on both sides. There is no other identifying information at all. A recording of uncertain origin, inexplicably compelling poetry recorded by a speaker with a high, sweet voice that scales up beyond human hearing in the language called Vak, which probably isn't spoken by more than a few dozen living scholars. The poem speaks of the wheel that turns, the coil that turns, the tide that returns, egg that returns. It speaks of a cloven sky, an opened heart, a dream of glittering eyes. It speaks lastly of its own conclusion, when it might be spoken in dreams before the deep door by a messenger of histories. Unhatched hymns attributed to St. Lucia the Eyeless, patron of glassworkers and name of the hour called Meniscate. The hymns venerate every sanctioned hour, celebrating them as the sun undivided, but also suggesting that each hour may become the next, madrigad to watchman, watchman to wolf, and so on. The Hymn of the Phases celebrates the Meniscate, from whom we do not turn, for the truth which is beauty, the beauty which is truth, and the perfect balance between the two. The Hymn of the Reflections, more puzzlingly, celebrates the Meniscate as the sister of Janus, mother of shadow, whose visage wondrous in emptiness can reveal all truths. On Matthias and the Amethyst Imago, Loss, an account of an occult romance. A certain Para, son of Aaron, claims to have written this in a single night as part of his initiation into the Damascene branch of the House of Leith, that order of immortals who rejected their past and future. The laws of the house forbade Matthias to love. The customs of the wood forbade the Imago to remain. So he conjured her a final time, when she had uncovered the shears of Alcapura, and she suffered him to cut the wings from her back, so that she might remain, and he suffered her to cut the parts which hold man's seed, to keep them from the detestable act. This was love in all its blood and joy. We have cast Matthias from the house. In the Cradle of Roots, Matthias and the Imago left their names, and though their names were lost, they found their name-day riddles. This we recall in Solution and Separation, so that in the presence of the moth our memories may become our futures. Do this wisely in memory of the name and the long who gave up their past that they might be together forgotten. The War of the Roads, 1451 to 1551. Willis Ford describes the War of the Roads, an event in a history other than our own, in detail, from its beginnings as a martial philosophical dispute between the dawn and sunset roads of alchemy to a war which ravaged half of Europe. It is not now widely believed that the sons and daughters of the Red Rose were forged into immortals. Understandably, they are, after all long dead. The forge itself devoured the greatest among them. The royalty of England, according to Willis Ford, became the sovereigns of the Leashed Flame, destroying or transforming their enemies, conquering Europe, establishing grand cathedrals to St. Spark. The alliance with the Forge begins to take its toll. At last, the Bronze King undergoes his great misfortune and great debasement, and is afterwards known as the Copper King. His attempt to cheat the Forge ends badly. The Leashed Flame is released, and the king's heirs are merely mortal sovereigns. The Collected Hush House Lectures. In the 1800s, Dr. Aaron Peel was invited to give a series of lectures to the Curia. They combine his pithy view of the histories with his particular brand of unhelpfully ironical insight. 1776, the third history, Louis declares the Mask of Masks and forbids mention of the great writhing within the walls of the Palace of Versailles, although by this point the worms are observed to move openly among the boulevards of Paris, sometimes even in daylight. The army is redeployed to defend the court. The mask lasts 1 lunar month and attracts several of the long abroad in Europe at the time, fleeing the worms or hoping to take advantage of the desperate Louis, or seeking access to the sealed mirrors of the palace, or just eager to attend the most inventive and desperate debauch of the century. Many know espouse wormish sympathies. Let 100 histories flourish. Tear down the tyranny of eternity. To grow long is usually to cast off these sympathies. There would be no immortality without eternity, and eternity, we often seem to decide, is only tyranny as long as we are not eternal. This is one that I am kind of conscious. I'm actually thinking. So I think some of these relationships have existed before Book of Hours, because obviously Malachite is referred to beyond just Book of Hours. So I do think that there's something very specific about the. I think there's something very specific about copper as relates to specific hours, but I can't put a direct connection to it in the sense of I can't put a direct connection to it in terms of something that would like explain along all the steps. I also know, I'm sure you're already thinking of the reference to tin as the king's metal. The Humors of a Gentleman, Samuel Savage's satirical comedy on the intrigues of the ailing but cunning John's son, his mistress Mavelyn, her lover Leo, and the upstart Corvino. By the end of the first act, Mavelyn has revealed a secret door in the walls of the house to Leo, and Corvino is taken to consuming worms. The play is scabrous and occasionally hilarious. The characters are contrary and capricious. Many of the more resonant lines might well be formula of power disguised in plain sight. And The Invisible Opera, unfinished recording, a recording of a 1911 attempt at a performance of Wings Within Wings, the so-called Invisible Opera. The singers complete the skewbald aria, Beneath Our Skin, and A Rose in Maya without incident, but The Invisible Opera is dedicated to Farazref the Magpie, who delights in unexpected interruptions. The recording ends with a clamor of horrified voices, a grating metallic screech, and a soft brass buzzing that fades into burring silence. Okay, I've already committed so much. So we already have a hindsight. We already have loss. We don't have salt, and we're working on the... Yeah, you know what? I'm just going to get the salt, and then we'll wait for the next... I'm trying to remember. I don't think it's in here. Yeah, so King's Luck Pie, a beef pie with pears and cinnamon and secret ingredients, is the traditional dish of the house. It was first cooked, as they say, for King Henry when in great secrecy on St. Piran's Day he came to Cornwall seeking the king's metal, tin, to restore his alloy. It probably didn't happen, but the pie did. And then Spire. Here Hendrik de Wolf met in secret with King Henry, once the Bronze King, now Old Copper-Nose, for the great debasement had ended the supremacy of the leashed flame, and Henry's heirs were no more than human. Here is a story that Hendrik's son Thomas listened from the rafters, that 3 times he heard Henry ask his father to break a certain promise in the matter of Carriers beyond the wave, and the 3rd time the father did not refuse the king. This, says the story, is why Thomas never liked to make a promise thereafter for fear of breaking it. And then obviously, I mean, the thing that makes this game so rewarding, but also why I always become very cautious in terms of why I always become very cautious in terms of talking about this stuff is that obviously, the great debasement, the great misfortune is a very layered discussion. So there are implications in terms of the ability to produce heirs. There is the alloy, right? Is the alloy a metaphor? Are we talking about real alloys? Obviously, in terms of how it's talking about the various items, Henry once was bronze, now copper. Copper, in this case, being not a very endearing term. He's looking for tin. But of course, then there's also there's the book on bells when it also talks about tin bells and the what was it? There's the alloy royal, but then of course there's also the discussion about mixing certain alloys and producing the alloys incestuous and so on and so forth. So, I don't think it's coincidental. I mean, obviously, clearly it's not a coincidence. Clearly these things are related to each other, but it's a little bit, like, even something like hours, right? The terms hours and names are chosen, and they are specialized terms, but they're not completely independent of our understanding of hours. Well, at least in terms of the terms being used, right? In terms of phrases like intercalate and such. So I've always kind of been resistant to speak at length on some of these things until I feel like I have something like really ironclad that kind of covers all the bases. And at the moment, the story of Henry and the debasement is always one where I kind of keep an antenna up. Every time I see a reference to it, I'm like, okay, this is, I know to look here, and I know to look here, and I know to look here. But it's not one that I'm able to sort of sit down and give a sustained discussion on, other than sort of the fragments. Mind you, I will also say this is a place I've always been more comfortable, I feel. I don't know, like in some contexts, this really, like, I feel that this probably doesn't win me friends in terms of gaming, but I think in some contexts, like, okay, there's the old joke, right, about, I think it was Truman who said this, that he really wanted a one-handed economist because he kept getting the on one hand, on the other responses. But the thing for me is that the ability to, or, I'm sure this even goes back to Aristotle, right? Like the idea of, an intelligent man being able to kind of keep two contradictory ideas in his head at once. I personally find it valuable, even not even necessarily just comfortable, but I actually think it's important to sort of stay in a realm where there are a number of different possibilities. And this can be tricky, but I guess one way I would sort of describe when I do research, and I'm particularly dealing with research that is dealing with sort of contingent or uncertain matters, right? Because, I mean, this is one thing, like when you're doing empirical work, you'll usually have, like statistics, right? You have an error term, you're sort of quantifying your ignorance to a certain extent. But even if you're doing something a bit looser, right? If you're not even doing the empirical side, but you're just thinking about potential states of the world, or if you're dealing with situations with imperfect information, I kind of have this this split, right? So, it could be one thing, it could be another, and that's the lucky case, right? Where you've got some kind of dichotomous variable. In a lot of cases, you're dealing with sort of a continuum of possibilities, and so you have, 6 or 20 different states of the world are sort of running in parallel. And when I try and think of this stuff, right, we'll kind of be going along those tracks. And then you'll sort of say, okay, and seeing as, we're in these states of the world and now X occurs. And in some of those worlds, X is impossible, right? Because it's, I don't know, we'll say Edward is king, right? Well, in this case, in the world of Book of Hours, you can't say that Edward is king. We know that Henry is king, right? And so you sort of snip that state of the world, at least as far as that contingency is concerned, right? You've run into a situation where it's a contradiction. Anybody who's taken a logic class sort of knows that this is effectively proof by contradiction in an extremely inefficient way. But in some cases, it can be really tricky to keep all of those worlds in your head. Like, it's something that I find kind of enjoyable, and I find it a useful sort of analogy, if not an actual process. Like, what I'm trying to describe to people in terms of why I'm allowing certain things that someone would say as impossible. It's just sort of like, it's like, okay, so, well, do you actually mean that this is impossible, or do you just mean that, under the current evidence, it's very unlikely? Because, of course, clearly those are two different things, right? So, good example of this, if you had asked me, is it possible that, a god from nowhere is part of, I think it's Calyptra, I would have said, well, no, because the gods from nowhere are sort of these alien and horrible hours that sort of want to completely distort the way of things. Like, how could they be incorporated into this? Hello, Mjolnir's Might. Good to see you. How could they be incorporated into this, this sort of order, or this preservation of secrets or whatever? And yet, clearly, when you go through the game, you do actually have one of them come up. And at no point was there a rule established that this was forbidden, that this was not a possibility that could emerge. It was rather it was kind of imposed because it just didn't seem to fit, right? But that was an assumption. So again, this is kind of why I like living in that contingent space as long as possible, because when I'm quick to make a judgment like that, I tend to find that I trip over myself and realize, oh, hang on. Yeah, no, it makes sense that this other thing. But then again, I've lost all of that useful thinking that could have happened to go down the other side. Sorry, this is a really weird thing to try and explain. But yeah, with that in mind, it does create for some really frustrating quote-unquote explanations, though, because if it's one of 20 possibilities running in the back of my head, result. It makes it very difficult for me to give a straight answer. All right, so we know we're getting an intuition. It seems a little silly to bend over backwards for it, but I wonder if there's a way for me to somehow... So if I give up sharps, like I was originally, we've already put this into Ragged Crossroads. I was going to put this into Disciplines of the Hammer, but then I don't have a way to put the intuition into it. So I do have the option of Sand Stories. The catch here is I think the only lesson with Moon is sharps. So here's the question. What is my outside option for leveling up? Oh, well, okay, Sickle and Eclipse. Although that I was probably going to put to... Oh yeah, no, we'll be fine. I'm not losing much if I use this to level up Sand Stories. I feel a little bad doing it, but... Okay, so chuck an intuition at it, and what's another thing that Mr. Kill could give me? Gossip. All right, I'm no expert, but I'm no dabbler either. Improve the skill to level 3. Okay, so I'm gonna go a little crazy in terms of the books that I'm reading. I'm probably gonna overdo it here, but in this case, I think it's worth it. Let's use health in this case. We'll do As the Sun Is Course. And then I'm also going to do In Memory of Gods. Trying to think if there's a winter desk I can do this at. I don't think there is anymore. But I think a heart desk will do the trick, so we can use the reading room. We'll do Quenchings and Quellings. And then In Memory of Gods, and then of course we need Fusine for that, so... So that should cover me for... Disciplines of the Hammer. Taking a break from painting minis for your friend's D&D game. I thought you said your dad's D&D game for a second. I said, wow, cool dad. It's funny, I've never associated D&D with minis despite the fact that that's how that game got started. So I'm just updating my notes here. So Lockworks and Clockworks is at 4. Putrefactions and Calcinations is at 3. Okay. I actually think those memories are gonna cover me for... Yeah, I think those memories cover me for the... for both the Disciplines of the Hammer and the... the Sand Stories. So sorry, I just want a minute here to reorganize. Ah, crumbs. Okay. I think that's good. That feels like too... Again, I'm not super experienced in D&D, but I feel that is too many beholders. I realize it's been a little... it's a little bit of a quiet stream tonight, but do you folks mind if I take a small break? I'm about the halfway point, and I could use a refill on my tea. So that's going to give me a little bit of time to think about. Just a reminder, in terms of overall plans, I'm going to be using like the drums and dances, weaving and not working, Sacrosolus and Victi to level up certain skills. And the idea here is I'd like to sort of raise the floor if I can. But I'm going to need a little bit of a think in terms of how I put these down. Because clearly I'm going to need to use all of this before the end of the night, but I'm also going to want to try and put the memories towards disciplines of the Hammer where I can. So that's just a long way of saying if I can't. Actually, you know what? Just put you in position 4, and then... Yeah. But yeah, if I can, I'd just like a minute to have a think. But I also realize that Mjolnir's might just got here, so it seems like as soon as Mjolnir shows up, I'm just running away. Please don't take it that way. But yes, I've executive decision. I'm gonna get some tea. I will be back as soon as I can. Please talk amongst yourselves, or perhaps get up and have a stretch and take care of yourself. Maybe get some tea yourself. Either way, I'll try and keep it quick. I did just boil the kettle about an hour ago, so shouldn't take that long to get back. It's only half full. All right, I'll see you all in a little bit. Okay, sorry about the wait there. I yanked out my headphone headphone cable, but I can hear the game again, so wasn't fatal. But let's get rid of that sign. All right. So, again, the ideal here, just maybe some of these moves will make a little more sense when I explain the overall plan. So the things that I want to put on the Tree of Wisdoms would be Sand Stories to Birdsong. So Birdsong, in terms of available slots, has position 4. That's the highest level that's available. Illumination actually has several slots available. I have no idea why. Like, there's sometimes these little dead zones in the Tree of Wisdoms that don't let me grab. It seems like it's on the outer ring, maybe. But anyways, so we have 6, 5, and 4, which would be available. We also have like 2 and 3, but those aren't as exciting. So I want to try and put these as high up as I can. So 6, 5, and 4. The illumination is Auroral Contemplations. Excuse me. Ragged Crossroads, which is 5, which leaves Disciplines of the Hammer for position 4. So we basically need two lessons to level that one up. Excuse me. Finally, for Skolokosophy, we had a 4 and a 3. So that's Lockworks and Clockworks. And then Putrefactions and Calcinations. So essentially what this means is that to put the last lessons in the Tree of Wisdoms that haven't been accounted for, I need, I believe, one more into Sand Stories, and then 2 more into Disciplines of the Hammer, or to put it another way, Edgeforge, Rose, and excuse me, Moon. You do have a third. Usually, I think it's just if I disturb, I think it's just this blanket that I wind up using. Usually, what happens, if I start sneezing, it's because something's irritating my nose. Excuse me. And I'm hopeless at that point. All right, anyways. From there, any remaining elements of the soul will go towards... any remaining lessons will go to leveling up the lowest level of the skills. So for instance, in this case, it would be Moon and Winter, Forge and Knock, and Grail and Knock. And of course, if I could use any of those, they'd be going into my... Well, most of them, they'd already be going into the skills that... the skills that I want to level up already. So then the question is, okay, well, what's the... Like for drums and dances, right? What's the lowest heart or nectar that I can work with? And you could say, well, technically a language. But it's like, okay, yes, you're very clever. What else? So in this case, it'd be strings and songs, weaving, not working. I think that's it, actually, because herbs and infusions is the higher one. So yeah, at that point, the question is weaving and not working or strings and songs. I'm slightly partial to strings and songs, although, no disrespect to the weaving and not working. So then the question there becomes, okay, well, do I have, the 4 memories to work with? Yes, we have quite a bit of music, so that won't be that hard. And then, from that, it's like, okay, am I giving up anything else that I might want to use? So for instance, to seal the deal, I would need to use Confounding Parable, or maybe the Beguiling Melody. Actually, yeah, with 4, we've got this little cluster here. But yeah, that's the rough shape of all of this. So as it happens, I'm going to lose the intuition that I already had. There's no recovery. Well, I mean, I guess I could try and use it in some other recipe, but it's not that important. But yeah, that's going to be in the interim while I I load these up. Actually, one thing I could do would be to restore the music. So with that, Trist is the most available. So I'll use Singlefoot songs again. Can read a book for the Beguiling Melody. And I guess we've come round to Perugian Diaries again for cheerful ditties. All right. So now we just implement all of this. I also don't have an unlimited number of elements of the soul. Like, we've done a pretty good job of using them up over the course of the day. Dead men don't tell no bloody tales. Well, who'd listen? Right, the skill is now level 3. Its power aspects have also increased. So again, this is kind of the idle time. So what I'm going to do here, we already are bringing back the... And this one's Heart or Sky. We'll use Faust for this. Actually, I guess we can use the core. But yeah, so in this case, we've already committed the Cheerful Ditty, the Savage Hymn, and the Beguiling Melody, and those are because we're already reading those books. So then the question is, well, which of these do I want to give up? So I've got the Satisfaction, Solace. Actually, what I'll do, let's put Torg's Cleansing, Sight, Contradiction, Secret Threshold, Name Day Riddle, Pattern, and Confounding Parable. So these are ones that are sort of special. These are the ones that I first want to use when, these are the ones that I'd want to use. So the nice thing about this, right, I just click and, you know, Satisfaction or Solace, it doesn't matter which one. I'm going to put the Satisfaction in this case. So satisfying to have come so far. The next question I might want to ask is whether or not the Grail or Heart will help me for a future level up. And that will answer in just a second. So having committed the memories that we need for strings and songs, I guess the question is, what am I going to use with weaving and not working? So again, it's a question of Moth or Heart. We may just use weaving and not working at this point. We also have the option of resurgences and emergences, but I don't know, in this case, matching it to weaving and not working seems to make sense. So we'll do the same routine. So here, this is actually a slightly more difficult one because we don't have the relevant memories. So we could put the Name Day Riddle. We could put the Solace. Could put the Occult Scrap. And I think we're coming up short on the last one. So that might be something I set aside for later. For Inks of Revelation, I think that will actually be the one that we use to level up resurgences and emergences. So I definitely want to keep my powder dry on the mothy stuff. And then for Sacra Solace and Victi, do I have any for... Yeah, so I mean, I suppose at that point we can level up Lockworks and Clockworks. Interesting. That was not how I was expecting that to go. But fair enough. We'll let it play out. We'll see what Mr. Kill gives me, and we'll see if I can accommodate these over the course of the day. All right, we've read this a couple of times, so I'm going to leave Bittersweet Certainty for later. We've done well for money, but I think we can afford to throw another whist at the Sweet Bones. The Deaths of the Moon, a historical tract on various forms of survival after death. When the heart no longer beats, the Grail may keep the spirit in the body, and an appetite is indicated to sustain. Alukites are the best known, but not the only of this nature. This is the waning moon mode. The full moon mode is the intensification of one element or soul to the point where ordinary sustention is unstable. Our protector, the generous of hosts, began of this nature, and its generosity remains ungentle. It is possible for the body's health or the heart's core to outpace the other elements, so that a static mode becomes impossible and growth proceeds in dramatic stages until balance remanifests. So Mjolnir's Might, this is a tricky one to answer because, I mean, really I was playing this during the beta of the House of Light expansion, but this is actually the challenge that I've run into. So the whole house is unlocked. We're ready to commit the finals, like have a completely filled Tree of Wisdoms. Every room of the house is unlocked. Every Newman is in my possession. Really, this is the point where under a normal save, I would be writing a history and getting ready to commit it in the next Numa. The challenge is that I don't actually have a full roster for the Lighthouse Institute because not all of the stories were implemented when I was doing the save. Like the save I started with didn't have all of the stories available, so. A good example here, we did something with Connie which makes her unsociable, so she's not available for the salons. However, Connie doesn't appear in any of these slots, and so there's really nothing that I can do with her, and that's unique to this save. That's not what actually happens in the game here. So I'm quickly running to a point, and one of the side effects is that we've done enough salons and we've done enough work here that I'm sort of full up in terms of my lessons, but all of these are the books I've not yet read and gotten lessons for. So I actually have quite a bit of reading that I can do just to, learn more about the lore and be able to raise up my skills. But honestly, the thing I'm really looking for are not just visitors to the house, but specifically visitors that will fill specific roles that I would like them to. Definitely no chance that I'm soft locked. Again, I don't know. I sometimes have to push against this expansive definition of soft lock in Book of Hours. A lot of people say that, and it just means I'm having trouble progressing. I can end this game whenever I want. The only way, even with my particular save, to not be able to get an ending to the game is if I take my journal and throw it into the ocean. But I don't have the same options available as I would under a fresh save. So, and again, I'm sure you meant soft lock in like the actual definition on this, but I it's come up enough that for the benefit of those who may have a different understanding, I'm not necessarily able to encounter things that people who are starting a new House of Light playthrough would, but I'm definitely able to get the House of Light. I'm able to get a House of Light ending. It's just that I need to, because I've taken certain paths, essentially what's happened is that the game has presented me with more options than I can actually deliver in the ending. And that what that means is because I've gone down some of the paths that are not available to me without going in and manually editing, and I'm not 100% sure how the Lighthouse works on the technical side of the game. I don't really want to go in and meddle with a save and then potentially break it. Essentially what I've done here is I may need to spend some extra time and some extra seasons to get a couple of people inspired to be able to fill in those gaps that that Connie or maybe somebody like Schaller would have done. And the thing is, I do want to make choices in the game that I think are interesting story-wise and consistent with what I might choose for myself. And so sometimes that means supporting people that aren't the most useful for me in terms of certain paths. But we'll see, right? It depends how I'm feeling at a certain time. All right. I don't think the presence of the bittersweet certainty changes any of my immediate options, but we'll see. Okay, the skill is now level 5. Its power aspects have also increased. And dead men don't tell no bloody tales. Well, who'd listen? So, the main question right now is, having narrowed down to a few choices, what do I think I can get away with without messing with my main priority, which is to level up Disciplines of the Hammer and Sand Stories? Which will eventually be level 4. Let's keep working on the weaving and not working, I think. So that we can employ the core. So I'd be giving up a little more than I want on this one. Resurgences and emergences. I'd be using Inks of Revelation for that. Slightly more promising, but I think I'm still giving up the wrong stuff. So I can give up the Occult Scrap, the Name Day Riddle, and I can use the Merciless Alteration, but I'm still missing one that I need, so that's also not an option. Now I can try the Lockworks and Clockworks makes me feel a little uncomfortable, because for that one, there's like a real shot, right? I can use the Salt, the Occult Scrap. Oh, you know what? That does work. Definitely use the Stolen... Nope, Stolen Secret helps the... Yeah, I can live with this. So let's get another Solace. And another Salt. Just trying to think if there's anything else I want to try and do with these, because I could try and go for another Name Day Riddle, but we're really close to the end of the day. And then the question is, which of these do I want to give up? Well, the loss would be the obvious. You know what? All I'm really losing is... something I'm going to throw away anyway. The opportunity cost to throwing away a lot of this stuff is basically, like, it's not exactly 0, but it's darn close. And at this point, I really just want to be getting rid of lessons. Okay. So I'm going to skip over a few of these because we've read them before, and I want to try and keep some of this in my head. We haven't read the Wind's Ruin, though. So the second volume of the Meditations of Abbot Thomas of the Abbey of the Black Dove. Abbot Thomas speaks of his time as a raider when his name was not Thomas but Toke, scything the sea, striving for plunder. Abbot Thomas clearly regrets his storm years, and much of the book is taken up with his thoughts on penitence. but there are hints that he misses those years in the companionship of his sword brother, ship brother, Trygeave. And Perugian Diaries, in 1907, at the age of 18, Christopher Lopoli left Strathcoyne's household to study theology at the University of Perugia in Italy, enrolling under the name Christopher Strathcoyne. For 4 years since his adoption from a Bristol orphanage, Lopoli served as Strathcoyne's pupil and protege, but his relationship with this austere and secretive man was always complicated. His journal confides, "I still think Fraser's intentions are good, certainly he agrees, but I never understood the final goal of his investigations. He is never prepared to enlighten me, and good intentions or not, I can no longer bear this dream of eyes. We have agreed to part almost amicably." Lopoli left Perugia in 1909 without completing his degree. He had long lost interest in his studies, and the latter half of his journal is concerned with his studies of Umbrian folk songs and notes towards his own compositions, which are of widely varying quality. One of the better ones, In the Marshes of Night, suggests he visited the site of Old Lake Fucinus near Ortuccio. When something is given to the sea, it rarely returns, though, of course, I did. So my hope would be that we finish the... Actually, I'm going to do one more book here. We're going to read something for Impulse. Actually, might as well read something for Satisfaction as well. Clearly I'm doing this for the satisfaction and not because it's just a heck of a lot of fun to read the Barry book. I don't even remember where we were. I think I'm going to try the Book of Masks. The skill is now level 5, its power aspects have also increased. So I'll worry about, well, it's not that hard. Okay, so I'm curious, did I get enough to mess with weaving and not working now? Because I think I changed the priorities a bit. I have even less than before. Closer, but again, not where we need it. So, that means I take an element of the soul and I apply it to the paper. I think at this point with where the whist... Oh no, we can afford another one. Once we're down to sort of 2 of something, I'm a little more reluctant to use it just to make money. But in this case, we're fine. Again, the idea here is to try and use as many elements of the soul as I can to... use as many memories and lessons as I can, because most of this stuff is going to go away. But I also want to keep my priorities in line, so... As the sun is course, Joel of the Bridge, a retired soldier and sometimes tollkeeper, wrote this epic poem about Alexander's famously inexplicable decision at Issus to withdraw from the war with the Achaemenids and his subsequent return to Macedonia. Alexander meets at Issus with Darius, king of kings, for 3 days and 3 nights. On the first day, the 2 men trade threats. On the second, promises. On the third, secrets. Darius tells Alexander something so shattering that he retires to his tent to consider matters of strength and matters of mastery. At dawn on the 4th day, Alexander announces, "The sun has his course upon which he returns, and so do I." He returns to Macedonia, executing 2 of his captains when they dispute his decision. He brings with him the names of a blind god and a rite of sacred betrayal, for Joel opines, without betrayal there would be an end to war. So sickle and eclipse is roughly equivalent to sharps, and we get a contradiction for our trouble, which is inconvenient given that we just reshelved everything, but fair enough. Okay, so next up. In memory of gods, the Barrowchild, a nameless Gaulish adept who joined an organization identified as Ordo Lamea, writes regretfully of the destruction of the gods who were stone, the hours who preceded humanity. The Barrowchild singles out the Scarred Tribune, the Red Grail, the Forge, and the Moth for a special condemnation as murderers of the first gods. We live in the shadow of their crime, she writes, and we must evade it or repeat it. The Barrowchild describes how the Grail drained the hour called Tide, how Moth usurped the wheel from within, stealing its skin, and how the Forge first eclipsed then shattered flint. Perhaps these are glories, she observes, but then it cannot be that glory is merciful. So Ragged Crossroads for that. Hindsight. Okay, so before I go too crazy with this, let's say the Sickle and Eclipse will be, we employ the Sickle and Eclipse towards sand stories, whereas Ragged Crossroads we apply to Hammer Time, Disciplines of the Hammer. So we'll just wait this out. The Orchid Transfiguration's Noon. The 3rd volume of a compilation of quasi-Rosicrucian allegories, supposedly by Robert Flood. This is in the original Latin. A long dialogue between the Mountain Mother and the Vigilant Storm describes the ways in which both mountains and storms end and the protections they use against those ends. But we must use the knife, said the lion-throned one, the noose, the flame, the waking word against those who have passed the 3-valve door, and so none may pass. That is our law and the law of the sun. Again, some of these are just hopeful reads as opposed to essential. The sea does not regret, Eason Fekri, one-time Secretary Salvant of the Curia of the Isle, responsible for the Curia's healing efforts, writes of his experiences in Brandkrug and hints at his travels elsewhere. The sea does not regret the tide, Fekri writes, for when the tide is passed, it leaves its traces on the sand, which traces are the sea's memory. Fekri is a keen fisherman. He speaks glowingly of the fish suppers of Brandkrug. He also admits that his enthusiasm for the bounty of the sea has altered him, that before he came to Brandkrug he consumed only those things found in the earth. I was the greater thereby, but all of us give up what we were to become what we are. Alright. Nothing's history when first it's written. And Storm. Dead men don't tell no bloody tales. Well, who'd listen? So we'll keep talking with Mr. Kill. But priorities. Hammer time. So we will use Ragged Crossroads. That we will employ... I think I can afford... let's actually keep off the FET for now. We'll use the metal in this case. And for this, we'll use the Fear, and we will use... Torg's Cleansing. Actually... Foresight. I'm not going to bother restoring these things because we don't have that much time left in the day. This is more about spending down memories than trying to acquire them. Although it wouldn't necessarily hurt for me to try and read another book. I am tempted to do so. I think I'm going to wait until the... I think I'm going to wait until the morning. Or I'm going to wait until the existing lessons are dealt with. All right, the Berry Book. Thyrza Blake, 7th librarian of Hush House, talks about fruit for no other apparent reason, but that it was the kind of thing she did. She talks about fruit in the woven language Kilisimi. Who was it once said, fruit is the womb of a plant? It was me. Take a few moments to think on that in ripened wisdom. I shall leave a blank space for your moments here in this page. Nectar, children mine, cast my words into a sufficiency of nectar, and watch the Pyrus Persimmon burst from wood. Gather more nectar, wring it from the trees in the earth, and our Persimmon gushes forth the sacrament. You will thank me. The Book of Masks, Athena Vanna's work on the rogue hour called the Vagabond, who is also known as the Laughing Thrush, the Centipede, the Pilgrim, and by many other names, or as Vanna has it, Masks. The Mask of the Laughing Thrush, says Athena Vanna, has a great friendship with the sun and splendor, the highmost hour of the Mansus, now divided and departed. The Mask of the Sight Thief painted the river in the Mansus. The Mask of the Vagabond was forbidden the Mansus, not for what she had done, but for what would occur. The Mask of the Centipede recalled her birthplace, Maya, which had punished her for creeping into the temple precinct. This mask cursed Maya to drink only dust and to be remembered only by the wind, for not beneath any mask does she forgive, but the centipede's hunger is not to be forgotten. Sorry, just bear with me a second. This is the way to the wood, but perhaps the wood is not a suitable place for a librarian. Okay, disciplines the hammers up, and we got a replacement solace. So this should be our last chat with Mr. Kill. But again, let's focus on the priorities here. So number one would be Disciplines of the Hammer, and anything goes for this one. So for instance, we don't have any use for Torg's Cleansing after Disciplines of the upgrading Disciplines of the Hammer. We may use the Contradiction. We'll very likely not need the knock. So yeah, this will be the batch that I work with for now. And this time we'll use the shout. Okay, so Ragged Crossroads, there we go. Another fruit plucked from Knowledge's tree. Improve the skill to level 4. So the rest of this is, I guess for Sand Stories there was, this is a tricky one. Sand Stories, it was really just a question of 4, so we don't need to give up too much for that. Maybe we'll use the Secret Threshold, the Intuition, and maybe the Salt. I may want to adjust that. But what I'm trying to do where I can is save the stuff that might go into the Weaving and Not Working or the Inks of Revelation. Basically anything that wouldn't be, anything that might be useful for Weaving and Not Working and Resurgences and Emergences. But I think we're running out of runway. I think we're going to be able to do one, but not the other. All right, night has fallen, dawn will come soon. I'll make a decision in terms of what memory I keep after we've committed everything. We can save that sort of to the very end of the day. Okay, the skill is now level 4. Its power aspects have also increased. And we've got a foresight, which probably would have been helpful with Disciplines of the Hammer, but there you go. All right, Sand Stories. So, this one we're going to employ Sickle and Eclipse. We will use, it doesn't really matter if it's Fet or Trist. I'll use Fet in this case. So for this one, it's any rose and moon. And then weaving and not working requires heart and moth, whereas resurgences and emergences requires grail and moth. So basically, most of this stuff, it basically just doesn't matter which one I go for. So I think we'll go for our original trio here. Another fruit plucked from knowledge's tree. Improve the skill to level 4. I haven't really made a decision yet in terms of which one gets leveled up. We'll see what's available. And then I'll... see. The only real drawback to saving it to the very end is I don't get the memory first thing in the morning, but that's fine. We don't have that much we need to get through. Really, I'm mostly more interested in reading the books for the their contents rather than the lessons that they give at this point. Okay, so if we try weaving and not working, put a core in there. So the pure heart would be solace, cheerful ditty. Again, I'm trying to keep the mothy stuff to the very end. So satisfaction sort of doubles for both. Storm. Okay, so there's only one. Fair enough, so satisfying to have come so far. So if I need to put 4 together to try and level up resurgences and emergences, just as a pure hypothetical, we would use satisfaction, beguiling melody, gossip, named... Oh yeah, we've totally got it. Cool. Now the question is, how do I pull it off? And then I guess the remaining question would be, how do I use the sickle and the clips? Confounding Parable is most useful on this one because it's got 3 aspects, and one of those is moon. Although I suppose I could have made a hard decision in terms of these lower levels. Oh, doesn't matter because we're not going to level it up in time. All right, well, it was worth a shot. Well, we know what we're doing. Okay, so today's plan. Actually, first of all, because I've got the remaining levels, I think we need to finish filling out the Tree of Wisdoms. So, we were going to put Sand Stories into Birdsong. Have I not finished leveling you up? There we go. A city. The 7 tainted immortals we call Legions are relentless in their appetite and outcast under the laws of heaven, but they have their uses to the hours. The Legion Cleiodukos has known all the great keys, and even now she holds the key of days. So every year she meets the vagabond in Vienna to exchange the names of the lesser keys for the stories of the vagabond's travels. We call their gossip Birdsong. Next up, Scolacosophy 3 and 4. So putrefactions and calcin. Oh, actually, we got to go 4-3. So Lockworks and Clockworks was the one that was going in first. Of locks, the locksmith's first duty: a key for every lock and a lock for every key. If a key were an hour, what lock would it open? Scolacosophy might hold the answer. And then putrefactions and calcinations, death alters, snow endures, Solomon Husher. In ashes, all days are death, all lives are sunset. For a time light persists, but we should not fear the scorch of a second dawn. This is Skolakosophy at its most merciful. Finally, this should be the last batch for all my skills. We have Auroral Contemplations. To know what will pass in what has passed, the practitioners of this discipline see endings and beginnings, passages and transitions in the same mode as dawn and sunset. The first sunrise, yesterday's light, determines the colors of tomorrow, and through illumination, we learn that we all began in light. Then Ragged Crossroads, to understand why 4 paths were not taken. Tomorrow's light. Every regret is a lesson. We cannot change what is past, but neither should we wish to. Regret is illumination. Disciplines of the hammer. To purify and combine the selves and the essences. The hammer shapes gates and shatters doors, within us and without. Steel and glass. A certain parable of the bright arts tells of a priest who raised an altar of steel and a glass to an old god, but then found a new god within the altar. And last but not least, Crack Track. In the tracks of beasts and the convulsions of his own carapace, in Egg-Vein and Shell Shadow, the many-eyed one found the signs which can be history. A tongue of sky. Crack Track was a gift from the light above the world. When glory touched the first life motes with this language, they entered the waking world. They were illuminated. And I'll give it, I suppose, the 21 seconds, but I think, well, one thing I could do here would be to hover over committed. So if everything is flashing, and I'm just going to double check this. So Crack Track, Fusine, Deep Mandayak, Erikapan, Hennevet, Kilisimi, Ramson, Sabazine, Hyksos, Vax, Snow Stories, Doran Walls, Great Signs, Great Scars, Desires and Dissolutions, Pearl and Tide, Putrefactions, Calcinations, Ink of Containment, Sharp Sand Stories, Ragged Crossroads, Herbs and Infusions, Strings and Songs, Lockworks and Clockworks, Resurgences and Emergences, Inks of Power, Magaphine Mysteries, Disciplines of the Hammer, Spices and Savors, Sky Stories, Bells and Braziaries, Surgeries and Exsanguination, Sea Stories, Stitching and Binding. I want to double check Rhyme and Remembrance. Yep. Oral Contemplations, Signs and Sensations, Pentaments and Precursors, Insects and Nectars, Meniscate Reflections, Pyroglyphics, Sacrolemea, Watchman's Paradoxes, Applebright Euphonies, Hill and Hollow, Orchids and Narcotics. Well, I am going over them all, but if you insist... Pearl and Tide was for Nyctodromi. What remains? The sea, Whale Road, Salt Realm, Moonway. Anything given to the waves might find another home, unless the home is the sea. Nyctodromi shows us the way across the sea and the way home. It would have been really fun to find on my own, but I guess I can't play the way that I want. Thank you. It's just, I don't know, like, I really try not to be tough on rules for this place, but I don't get why there's like this one thing. Oriflamme's established 1776. Sense, Signs, Sciences. Dear librarian, we'd like to offer you this opportunity to purchase Honey the Comprehensive Guide. Alright, so the last question here is, what do we do with Sickle and Eclipse? I guess Pearl and Tide is the lowest of the moon. Actually, no, Snow Stories is the lowest of the moon stuff, so we can grab a loss and then use the Confounding Parable for that. And then from there, the real question here is, how many books do I want to slam all at once? Like, so with the Secret Colors, I think we've got enough moon stuff that it's not going to take too many memories. The only thing I don't want to do is clog the channels with too many readings and then sort of find out that I'm in hot water. In fact, one thing I've already done is I've made it difficult to read a moon book. I think I'll wait on reading that one, but we'll move on to the next. So, okay, Enchiridion Triangularis also needs to wait. The Journal of Sir David Green should be manageable, though. So if we use the Arab... But I didn't think about where I'd get the extra edge from. Okay, so I'll read a contradiction book for that. For the moon, I guess we can do another... intuition, but I think we're actually going to have to pop the Wormwood Dream on this. Okay, next up. Book of True Blood, same argument as Journalist for David Green, except that we won't have the benefit of the Hyksos for the next one. Descent of the Shell. I actually don't have that high of a forge, it turns out. So let's, of course I used Ambrose Nest. Collars will help us with this one. So I'm kind of happy to find a home for the Merciless Alteration. We're really jammed up in terms of Moon and Edge. And then the Rose is going to also be its own challenge. So I think I'm actually going to need to start using Newman for these. And if I need to use Newman for these, it's basically going to be a one or two book a day sort of affair. Okay, not ideal. I was hoping that at the very least we would be leveling these things up. But I think at this point, I'm going to speed things up. I don't normally like playing this way, but we're really looking just to... we're looking to level as much and as quickly as we can. So, The Intimations of Skin, fiendishly complex, weirdly distorted illustrations of Congress and anatomy by the haunted visionary painter Niels Fredrik Malsker. Malsker illuminates the evolutions of the names of the Grail with unfortunate clarity. It seems that a lovely who consumes an ivory becomes an ivory, a lovely who consumes a thirstly becomes a thirstly, a lovely who consumes a name of another hour might take its place. In the penultimate illustration, a lovely grapples with a fungoid knot that can only be a name of the crowned growth. The lovely's mouth and other portals gape wide, and the growth name is already partially engulfed. But it seems that Malsker couldn't bring himself to illustrate the result, and the final illustration is only a scrawled, bloated obscurity. Okay, the green jasper tablet, supposedly copied from a tablet of green jasper, which serves as the covenant stone of the monastery of the fifth cup, which token, the token which gives that library shelter beneath the Watchman's Tree. Humankind hid itself from the glory's light in the roots of the Watchman's Tree, but for every chink we stuffed with cloth and hair, we opened another, and the light crept in, until we looked below into nowhere, and the eye of the mare in the tree winked red. The tablet expounds the dangers of inviting in the nowhere hour called the mare in the tree, and also of forbidding her entry, since she can never entirely be denied. Along the way, it reveals the secret of the sacrament malachite, in which the merry mare merrily spits, brewed with the rites of the roots from the Pneuma pear in the presence of sufficient nectar aspect. The Red Book of Brittany, a volume of ink lore gifted to St. Brendan's by Brian of Brittany, who was made Earl of Cornwall after the Norman conquest. The red flower lies heavy, but the roots of the Watchman's Tree are constant. The red flower is described as the temptation of suffering, but its suffering can apparently be allayed when the copper fruit is enspelled with nectar aspect alongside herbs and infusions techniques. A variant of the same approach, with the inks of power techniques outlined here, can gentle Lethe into a great ink. And The Queens of the Rivers, a surreal contemporary play by the enigmatic Monica Medina, in which the Queens of the Rivers are murdered one by one. The Queen of the Vistula is poisoned, the Queen of the Dnieper chokes on a fishhook, the Queen of the Tagus is burnt alive. The culprit, it transpires, is the audience. The surviving queens are directed to execute whatever audience members do not escape. A surprisingly lucid epilogue suggests that the correspondence of river names with historical events does provide clues to secret histories behind our own. Okay, so satisfying to have come so far. So the Sickle and Eclipse was all about leveling up Snow Stories. Yeah, then it's just the Loss and the Confounding Parable. So what I should be prepping is the results of the current reading, so... So that's eventually going to spit out a Purifications and Exaltations, that's Lantern and Sky. So the problem with this one is I don't have an immediate source of Lantern and Sky, so... Alright, Auroral Contemplations is apparently the lowest lantern-wise. Fair enough. Well, clearly I'm going to go sky focused. Maybe sky stories, I'm not sure. But I at least have some basics to work with, which would be to get the music. Now there is one other thing that I want to start doing now that I've got theoretically all the elements of the soul taken care of. I think I'll leave that aside for now. Okay. I might have already taken care of the edge. I think I'm going to bring in a moon text to... Well, actually, okay, so we've got the moon spot available, but I don't think we have enough to make this work. So Edicts Martial is my best moon. The better way to handle this would be to bring in the secret colors. Okay, so actually if I give up the confounding parable, we're okay. I don't feel good about doing it, but yeah. I can master this mystery. And then we'll just reread another one. It might set us behind on other priorities, but I just have all these books that I need to get through, so I will... I should just settle at this point. Okay. Knowing that, I suppose it follows that I should be focusing a little bit more on edge. The Edge Newman. So looking at what's coming up, Moon, Edge, and Rose are the big ones. So in terms of candidates, I think it'd be a little much to expect all of those. The ones with Edge, I know a Merciless Alteration has Edge, but it doesn't have the Moon and Rose. I think the Irresistible Feast has Edge, but I think Edge is the only one on that. Now the Bells of Ys, if memory serves, has a Rose element to it, so that's on one of the tablets. I think that's the closest that I have, and then of course Moon is the one that I'm actually least worried about, so I think there's an argument to go for Bells of Ys in my current situation. Although I think that also requires Fusine. Yep. Shame on me. Alright. Lesson learned. The Concursum Diaries, the diaries of the explorer and murderer Lars Westergren. He's unhelpfully translated them into Frisian for privacy. There are map legends, there are maps of legends, and there are legends of maps. Aspects of the Mansis subsist in all of these, in much the same way that you find water in a swamp, and in a cup, and in the sky. Westergren describes a series of expeditions into the Mansis. He focuses on the details of the experience, the colors, the vistas, the textures, rather than the practicalities. He does warn that the Mansis changes each year, although he assures the reader that the doors have been the same. Doors may close, but they never disappear, at least not while there have been mortals in the Mansis. We're like mice. Wainscot Histories, subtitled Stories from Behind the Walls, a miscellany of non-traditional histories, including battles not generally acknowledged and countries which appear on no map, told in a playful, apparently fictional manner. Gore does not mention the Mansis directly, but constant coy metaphorical references to ascending the staircase of years, to the doors of sleep, and to the blue light of dawn suggest he had commerce with the unseen world. It was common in that time to speak of the division of the sun, by which contemporaries understood the eruption of barbarian forces and of their uncouth gods. Now I'm limited in terms of what I can throw at this. I think Disciplines the Scar is the best I can bring edge-wise. So just for the sake of argument, I'm curious. I think if we do David Green, we should be okay. Nope, because if we do... Oh, hang on, no, because then we just add the saw. Which I've stashed behind stuff. There we go. I can master this mystery, enough edge to match mystery edge. Okay. I'm definitely going to have lessons outrun my memories here. But I think I'm okay with that. And there we go. I'm no expert, but I'm no dabbler either. Now the other thing I'd like to start doing is leveling up some of the... Okay, so sharps would be a good example of this. Now if I recall correctly, the altars don't flash when you highlight over them. This will be a challenge. I don't think... Yeah, these... There we go. Alright, that's a start. So we take... Ah. Right. That makes it a little more interesting. Can't see these as being Hushery, yeah. And I don't see Winter... Well, actually, maybe here. But then Sharps... Okay, Sharps does apply. So, Whist... Whist. Sharpen my whist. I'll remember. It is written, Musgrave, fourth of the DeWolf line, writes tentatively about the Covenant of Brankrug and the legacy of the sacred inks he calls Incausta Potentialia. As the light passeth through a prism into many colors, so the great inks separateth into the lesser inks, and the lesser inks into inks minor. Musgrave coyly refuses to talk about the great inks, or else refuses to admit he doesn't know much about them. He insists that Ugol and Stargol, which can be mixed with sufficient nectar or sky aspect, are sufficient for most befitting purposes. I'll read this one more time. In 1907, at the age of 18, Christopher Olopoli left Strathcoyne's household to study theology at the University of Perugia in Italy, enrolling under the name Christopher Strathcoyne. For 4 years since his adoption from a Bristol orphanage, Olopoli served as Strathcoyne's pupil and protege, but his relationship with this austere and secretive man was always complicated. Hello, Oswin Meow. Very good to see you again. I hope you had a nice Christmas. Folks, for those of you who do not know Oswin Meow, a lovely broadcaster, somebody who originally watched my stuff, but somebody who I always am delighted to watch streaming, and is actually streaming a bunch of stuff that I'm looking forward to doing on stream in future. But I will say Oswin is probably my favorite to watch do Book of Hours. I've also watched her play Disco Elysium, and in fact, that is the reason why if you see Disco Elysium on this stream, you will. It's basically going to be based off of the strength of her broadcast. I will also say that this is one of the reasons why Oswin was one of the first people I thought of when Traveling at Night was mentioned, or was announced rather. And overall is just a very interesting person to talk to. So please do give her a follow. Definitely somebody who I like watching, and I like having around in the channel. For 4 years since his adoption from a Bristol orphanage, Elopoli served as Strathcoyne's pupil and protege, but his relationship with this austere and secretive man was always complicated. His journal confides, "I still think Fraser's intentions are good. Certainly he agrees, but I never understood the final goal of his investigations. He was never prepared to enlighten me, and good intentions or not, I can no longer bear the stream of eyes. We have agreed to part almost amicably." Elopoli left Perugia in 1909 without completing his degree. He had long lost interest in his studies, and the latter half of his journal is concerned with his studies of Umbrian folk songs and notes towards his own compositions, which are of widely varying quality. One of the better ones, In the Marshes of Night, suggests he visited the site of Old Lake Fucinus near Ortuccio. The Geminiad Volume 3, a fragile manuscript illuminated with twin shapes of sad and luminous beauty, and with all the phases of the moon. It might be as old as the 7th century, but the language Fucine is much older. Coral decorates its cover, and its page edges are sharp enough to slash a throat. These pages outline the nature and the doctrines of an hour that demands the union of what has been separated, an hour that is sought at the water's edge and beneath the moon, the witch and sister. The language is elusive, enigmatic, intricate. It'll take some untangling. The 3rd volume of the Geminiad reminds us that the witch and sister have been known to manifest as the sister and witch, and that this face may heal while the other face is always hungry. It implies connections between the witch and sister and the hours of the wood, especially the secret keeper called the Velvet, but it is ambiguous on whether the witch and sister is a wood hour proper, and it speaks at length about the sadness of the two who are one, the sadness that remains from their time as flesh. Unhatched hymns attributed to St. Lucia the Eyeless, patron of glassworkers and name of the hour called Meniscate. The hymns venerate every sanctioned hour, celebrating them as the sun undivided, but also suggesting that each hour may become the next, madrigad to watchman, watchman to wolf, and so on. The hymn of the phases celebrates the Meniscate from whom we do not turn, for the truth which is beauty, the beauty which is truth, and the perfect balance between the two. The hymn of the Reflections, more puzzlingly, celebrates the Meniscate as sister of Janus, mother of shadow, whose visage wondrous in emptiness can reveal all truths. Okay, so no lessons to work with yet, but that should be changing soon. Snow Stories is leveled up. And that will also get me a wisp. Actually, we might be able to employ that. Well, where would I employ that elsewhere? There you go. I almost never level these things up, incidentally, so this is going to be a bit of an education for me. Okay. Oh, sorry, I also wanted to read the Fucine text. Alright, let's put you at the Westcott desk. Emeranus Batelli, a fragment of iron alloy meteorite carefully inscribed and polished. This object houses a numen, a truth so powerful it can perhaps believe itself. And also, sorry, Oswin, I did see your reply. I did have an okay Christmas. I usually do. I usually read something. So this year, the highlight feature was the Agatha Christie story, The Adventure of the Christmas Pudding. So this is the Hercule Poirot Christmas special. And actually, it definitely bears a resemblance to the Sherlock Holmes story that we did the year before, The Adventure of the Blue Carbuncle. So apparently there's just something about detective fiction and missing precious stones at Christmas time that warms the English spirit. But But on top of that, we did 2 essays by George Orwell around Christmas time. I can share those with you if you'd like to read them. Obviously, they're not going to compare. They're not going to compare to a frog giving you an essay about toads, but it's Orwell. It's always good. And then I did read The Battle of the Books, because, my God, Jonathan Swift is a master. And yeah, I just really enjoy that particular piece. So, but yeah, I will definitely share them with you. I'm going to be wrapping up reasonably soon. So yeah, it does not surprise you in the least to find out that there was some Jonathan Swift for Christmas. A Descent of the Shell, a treatise on eggs, light, and optics by Abbess Melisson. Melikinth, maybe. Dazzlingly illuminated with renderings of the abbess's visions. The book is unexpectedly challenging to read. The bright glitter of the gold leaf illuminations requires a migrainous quality. The eye aches and tires. This is most likely the certain vivid book that Melikinth, I need to find out how to pronounce that, once sent to Gunhild, daughter of King Harold, which provoked in her a dream of eyes, but also caused her to begin to lose her sight until she was healed by the Saint Bishop Wulfstan. To complete it is a kind of test. Its double thesis, at last, seems to be that the sun is either an eye or an egg, and so the second dawn will be either its opening or its hatching. So, purifications and exaltations, foresight. I want to shelve this properly first. And how do I level these up? What was I going to level up? I think it was Sky Stories. Although we have enough for... no, let's keep to the plan. Okay. At last, I am something of an authority in this. Improved this skill to level 6. So the idea here, again, whenever I get new lessons, like the lessons at this point are secondary. I'll just mention for your benefit here, Oswin, we not only have opened up all of the rooms of the house, but I do need to I need to double check it, but all of the branches of the Tree of Wisdoms are at the top level. I guess technically I've covered up Skolakosophy. And I believe we have put as many skills as we can. I mean, there's a few ways that you can do it. You can count the number of skills, and you can count the number of things committed. You can see which ones have the commit. But as a first approximation, I think we've locked everything in, and then it's just a question of cleanup. Now, there's still further stories for us to do, and of course, there's lots of books to read. But at this point, this is the point where anybody who's still like in the early or mid stages of the game wants to punch the playthrough, because at this point I'm just like randomly throwing away certain lessons, and it's really about getting the lore. But what can I say? Our circumstances are different. So let's go for... I will use the phonograph on one of these, so let's do Beguiling Melody from the Flake Fusino recordings. I guess we'll do the phonograph for both of them. Now we have to use the text when it comes to when it comes to the Savage Hymn. Neither Strings and Songs nor Lockworks and Clockworks have... Oh! Bells and Braziers. So I'm going to have a cheerful ditty, a beguiling melody, a savage hymn. That's 3. Foresight is 4. So I guess I'll go for the confounding parable as well. Alright, The Secret Colors. Black Ellie, disgraced Damascene matriarch of the Sisterhood of the Triple Knot, wrote this while fleeing the agents of the duty. Ellie writes, the secret colors of the sun, the blessed traces of error, weaknesses in sunlight, balancing principles in its reflection. A deeper account of these secret colors, Ellie reveals, was kept at a shrine to the 3 hours of the chancel at the Grey Rock in the sea, far from the intrigues of the Sisterhood and Church. It is hidden from the common eye, but can be revealed with the arts of sickle and eclipse. Of course, we've already got the treasure of the house from that, but obviously a very helpful one. Particularly, like, it's notable in terms of the difficulty of the text. So you're not necessarily finding that one right away, but clearly. It's like, I always see texts like this as being an example of, okay, the game's kind of giving you a hand if you, if you're at the end game and you're struggling to find some of the treasures of the house, that'll be something to sort of give you a little bit more of a direct hand. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to reduce this to an overflow shelf now. I do want to redo the library at some point, but obviously I have my hands full. Okay, so the candidate for Sickle and Eclipse, Edge and Moon, so I suppose it's Desires and Dissolutions or any of the 3s down below here. I'll probably start with Desires and Dissolutions. So Moon and Grail. There's a moon. Grail, and I think Gossip will get me another Grail. The skill is now level 6. Its power aspects have also increased. So I think at this point we need to wait. I don't think I have the skills required to, or the memories required to level anything else up. Oriflammes thanks you for your custom. So Honey the Comprehensive Guide is not a difficult one for us to read. I would need to think about where insects and nectars go. Probably Pearl and Tide, putrefactions, or yeah, basically anything with Moon is gonna find a use. The other thing that I would eventually like to do is start working a bit harder on the salons. But so I've read the Singlefoot songs a couple of times, so I'm gonna skip over that one. The Lake Fusina recordings of the folk dances of the Fusine marshes, the wailing of flutes, the roaring of drums, cries like birds lost in the marshes. These are the songs the sisters sang to the witch, that the Thunderskin roared to the sky, the songs which heard the Dwendrazones of the songs with which the Dwendrazones of the Mantis keep their vigil. Once heard, they are not forgotten. Emiranis Spitelli. Fragment of iron alloy meteorite carefully inscribed and polished. Who gave us fire? Who gave us steel? What is the sound of dusk? Of what alloy is wind forged? Esoteric secrets of metallurgy and resonance are revealed, including the directions towards the creation of a terrible bell. Oh, hang on, I think... Yeah, no, we're already working on that, so... Newman, the bells of Ys. Ys, by her arts, found the strike tone that shakes the hours. For this reason, among many, the hours discourage traffic with Ys, but a bell cast with this secret could speak the Ys note. Alright, I will just caution some of you, this is a book that you can't get through normal means. So if you want to preserve the possibility of finding this book through a secret of your own and its contents, now would be a good time to mute the stream. If you do decide to mute the stream, just say so in chat, and you can let me know if somebody says that when I'm done reading. I can write in text that it's ready to go. So I'll count down from 5 to give people a chance to hit their mute buttons. And again, if you don't write in chat, I won't say anything, but gonna mute. Cool. All right. For the rest of you, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The Journal of Sir David Green, 1903. A confidential journal kept by Green, former Nocturnal Branch superintendent, but, by 1903, librarian of the House. Green has kept his journal in Hyksos, presumably as an extra measure of privacy. In 1903, the House cooperated closely with the branch, and Green was the public face of that cooperation. In private, however, Green is clearly disillusioned with the branch, which he increasingly regards as irresponsible. He is especially concerned about the construction of a suppressive mechanism beneath Brandkrug Jail and its likely occupant. Hours and names are dangerous, he writes, but at least our dealings have the benefit of long experience. An hour who acts before she is born, who leaves those places she had never entered if her names walk the world already, how can we understand their courses and their capabilities? The last entries alternate between calculations, tides, dates, financial calculations, and expressions of the fevered longing for AF. It seems that Green intends to run away with AF, and some of the calculations imply that he has been embezzling funds to that end, under cover of the chaos caused by the Ortuccio incident and the subsequent reorganization of Nocturnal Branch into the Suppression Bureau. The entries, however, stop abruptly before the year's end. It's not clear whether Green did in fact abscond with funds and fond friend, or whether he abandoned this journal for other reasons. This would have been a good one to give to Connie. So we get a fear for our trouble. I think we are all filled up, so... So anyways, that deals with the identity of the twins, and... No, I'm kidding. But yes, welcome back, those of you who are muted. That was a fun book to read, for sure. And I'll put it to you this way. So for those of you... This is, I think, one of the last secrets that I found, if not the last secret that I found. It's not necessarily an easy one to find on its own. However, if you know of the existence of those secrets, I think it is more likely. So if you are totally stumped and you want to know what I read, it's very easy for me to remember that particular one. Feel free to ask at some point in the future, leave a comment on a YouTube video, DM me, whatever it winds up being. I'm happy to share. It's nice to be able to preserve the experience for people who want to be surprised from some things. Because obviously I got through a full playthrough of this not knowing of that thing's existence. I found the other secrets, but not that particular one. So I figure it gives people a chance to encounter it on their own. The Locksmith's Dream, Portions and Proportions, the second volume of Teresa Galmier's examination of parallels in the mystic dreams of artisans. The frontispiece has been slashed with a razor. In this volume, Galmier records fewer dreams and explicates more on her own elaborate theories. We see this again and again. What is below can't escape what is above. The finest artisans all dream of the white door in the end. I'm no artisan, only a scholar. I think there's a secret that all these artisans know, but I think that secret is only half the story. Opening the Sky, an unusual recording of Varro's Opening the Sky, composed for the coronation of the new king, Henry IX. The record bears the suppression stamp, expunge. The first movement is soft, autumnal, the second unsettling, febrile, the third is bright, soaring, rapturous. The fourth movement is glassy, slithering, a tintinnabulous icicle rattle. The fifth returns to the theme of the third, bright and rapturous once again, but this is a choral movement. It becomes apparent, though, that these are much, much too pure and high to be human voices. They recall birdsong, they recall the sweep of the windswept sky, blue turning black at the edge of the higher heaven, and they wrench the heart in a direction the Bureau does not permit. Alright, so I believe I was going to put purifications and exaltations towards spells and braziers. Now, with Sickle and Eclipse and Sharps, these are basically, it's kind of like having 4 of either one, because as far as lessons are concerned, right, they just give me Moon and Edge. So I think I said one of them was going to be Desires and Dissolutions. Actually, really, it should be Desires, Dissolutions, Pearl and Tide, Putrefactions and Calcinations, and Inks of Containment. So essentially here we're looking for Moon, Winter, Rose, and Grail. And technically 3 of each. So honestly, at this point, let's just spam as many of these as I can get my hands on. Okay. So, I can get Rose from On the Matter and Deeds of Serpents. Pretty much always want Confounding Parables at this point. Anything Moon is pretty much an automatic yes. Hindsight will give me Winter, so White Book of Brittany. We're on to the Sea. No, we did the Sea Does Not Regret, so Queen's turn. I probably should have gone for Moon stuff first and then moved on, but it's all good. This one, I think I'll skip over. So technically Regrets would have helped, but I can see how Illumination, or not Illumination, Intuition will be a little more useful. It might also have been an idea to bring in Mr. Kill, I'm not sure, but I'll settle for what I've got here. The Gospel of Zacchaeus, an extremely heterodox account of the Nazarene Messiah and his works, describing his ascension to the mansus through the opening of his body. 7 were the wounds of his body, and 7 the doors of the house, 7 the lesser aspects of the hours, and Knock the aspect above all, for the mother of ants is the mother of salvation. The book includes a description of a rite which can be used to raise a corpse to half-life in memory of he who bled for the wood, but the marginalia claim that the mother of ants no longer permits use of this rite. The Wonderful Shape, Blessings and Invocations of the Triple Knot, recorded by a sanctuary, at a sanctuary in Cyprus, notable for its weavers, sculptors, and gardeners. The roots go deep, the knots remain. The final invocation is one for the restoration of the roots, to be spoken before an altar of the triple knot, but puzzlingly, it should not be spoken by a priestess of the knot, any priestess of the knot, or even by one who has been initiated into their mysteries. And Three Flowers Hath the Tree, Ernestine Peterhans records her observations of the growths of trees and flowers around the isle, and the omens and portents she attempts to draw from them, particularly the yew tree in Earl Brian's meadow, whose flowerings are sometimes eccentric. Ernestine observes that in the years when the tree flowers black, troubling secrets arrive. When it flowers red, war and fires follow, and that no de Wolf heir has ever been born in a year where it flowers white. Ernestine attempts to use the tree's growths to advantage in her business affairs, but it fails. She is evidently very concerned when Hendrik de Wolf's grandson Giles runs off with a pale trollop Hafren in a year when the tree flowers white. She begins to fear that she has entirely misinterpreted all the relevant omens. She is deeply concerned for the continuation of the de Wolf line and prays for Giles' return. Let's keep trying to generate more. So yeah, I guess this would be the time for the regrets rather. I'm tempted to do the Barrowchild's elegies again. Contradictions is the better one. So on to an Exorcist's Field manual. And then I'm trying not to waste too much effort here. Okay, so I'm going to wind up using the Stolen Secrets, so I should read Deaths and Their Evasions. Skill is now level 6. Its power aspects have also increased. I blew it in terms of timing. Doesn't feel good, but there we go. Another fruit plucked from Knowledge's tree. And at this point, we'll kind of just digest what we have left here. On the Matters and Deeds of Serpents, this was probably the Prophecies of the Naga, rendered into English and illustrated by William Midnight in Paris in the 1880s, but it shows a number of divergences from that text. It's certainly quite recent by the standards of VAC texts. The serpent folk, called the Great Hooded Princes, came to know the order called the House of Leith and warred across the miles with them. They made an alliance with the Mother of Ants, whose children they had been. The text describes how the Great Hooded Princes escaped, or will escape, from the Fifth History, where they had died, or were doomed to die. They engaged in a secret conquest of the land of the Great River, called India in some histories, and have ensured that all of the conquests of that land are false conquests. The Locksmith's Dream and Cursus, the fifth and final volume of Teresa Galmier's notorious work, which began as an examination of parallels in the mystic dreams of artisans, but became an account of her own occult journey. This volume was apparently never published, nor allegedly even written, yet here it is. The law goes all the way back to stone. The keys cannot be held or owned. This had, I believe, the unexpected consequence of those outside the law may hold and own them. But even they cannot keep them, and of course a key is no more physical than a spirit, but a spirit may be housed in a body, and I have touched a key with my own hands. So the Legions hold the keys. I had thought the Legions only old and powerful transgressors of the crime of the sky, but I begin to understand that the crime of the sky is more even than it seems, and why a twin who unites what is not to be divided might accept a Legion as her name. The White Book of Brittany, a volume of death lore gifted to St. Brendan's by Brian of Brittany, who was made Earl of Cornwall after the Norman conquest. The white flower lies heavy, but the roots of the watchman's tree run deeper than snow. The white flower is described as the death of wisdom, but wisdom can pass into sleep, not death, when the rage of glass is subjected to a sufficiently powerful winter aspect, while the ragged crossroads are invoked. The Queen's Turn, a 16th century translation of the Barrowchild's account of Lagia's turn, when Lagia, the queen unsated, was offered the opportunity to enter the service of the Hours of the Triple Knot, as long as she repudiated her brother-lover Antaios. Lagia accepts, setting aside the arts of the low red sun associated with Antaios. She bargains, however, for freedom for her daughters. The Hours of the Triple Knot accept casually, knowing that Lagia has devoured her daughters, but wily Lagia has decided in the secret hollow of her heart that she will adopt any who ask if they can prove their fierceness. The traditions described here, the ones generally described as hill and hollow, are associated with Lagia before her turn, but, now that she is a name of the Red Grail, they may also be used safely before an altar of the Triple Knot. The Book of Maya, an account of the 5 visits of the Desert Wanderer, probably the hour called the Vagabond, to the city Maya. She begins as a delighted child, perhaps even a mortal, but things then go badly. In her second visit, she came as Laughing Thrush. Her heart was bright within, her beak was ripe with song, but in the first moment her feathers touched the city stones, the laughter began. The Wanderer's penultimate visit is as Centipede, whose venom cracks stone. Maya is abandoned to the desert, but she returns one last time again as Laughing Thrush, with 4 other Hours who take the shape of birds, to celebrate the first roost above the bones of her hated kin. Okay, just give me a second here. This is one of the ones I was looking for. Sharpen my whist, I'll remember. Yes, so it looks like we can use the altars as much as we want. It's just the skills that we can't keep using. Okay, I'm gonna sketch this out on my own time. Night has fallen, dawn will come soon. So I may have closed a couple of opportunities, but let's try and level up as many of these as I can. Okay, Pearl and Tide wants Rose, so we throw the secret threshold at it. Salt and... yeah, I'm not going to be able to... not going to be able to do more than one. Okay, well that's fine, because we can keep the Confounding Parable. Alright, another fruit plucked from Knowledge's tree. Improve the skill to level 4. We will use the Confounding Parable. And then obviously the Sharps just kind of sits there. The Fear and the Hindsight are left aside, but them's the breaks. Okay, I think I'm probably going to leave it here. I am going to let the night kind of run through, though. Oh, hello. Maybe not. The Barrowchild's Elegies. The Barrowchild, a Gaulish adept who won a place in the ranks of the Ordo Lemea, enumerates the great shadows laid to rest in tombs of power and discusses their various conditions. The Barrowchild identifies numerous modes that are neither true death nor true life: the vitrification of the heart, the corrupt light of the wood, core stasis, the wandering of the fet. The Barrowchild warns particularly of the avidity of tryst, where a remnant shadow's longing for change survives the sense of self and even devours its whist. That longing may draw the curious into the tomb, where the remnant shadow changes so that it cannot be distinguished from its visitor, or that the reverse becomes true, and that it is never again possible to say whether it is the shadow or the visitor that exits the tomb. So, regret. 2 of the 3 I need. An Exorcist Field Manual, a practical guide to troublesome dead, grounded in theory, but with a clear focus on their disposal by the redoubtable Detective Ostiary Wheellock of the Suppression Bureau. The dead usually avoid light as the most immediate manifestation of eternity, which has no place for death. However, those dead uplifted by gold, that is to say touched by actinic theoplasma, happily bought about in daylight and are perhaps strongest at noon. If you are dead but uplifted by green, that's the Ringyu's blessing. The crown growth offers a similar but nastier benefit. This is how burgeoning risen come about, but there are different degrees of sentience and freedom depending on which growths are involved. The consciousness of one uplifted by green is always greatly altered, though they never really seem like the same... is greatly altered, though. They never really seem like the same person. They may have dregs of their original souls, but these are often replaced by something else. The upshot, invariably, is that they need to be set firmly on fire. All right, there's the extra whist. Deaths and their evasions. Father Stanislav John Schaller writes of the means and limitation of passages between the orders of the Mansus. No long names, hours. Unusually, Father John has written this book in Fucine, for he says a special secrecy. He speaks very cautiously of the exceptions that can sometimes be made to the edicts of Chancel and Calyptra, and hints at the means by which he successfully returned a lantern long to flesh. Schaller mentions most cautiously of all that he has been permitted to see a book that speaks more deeply on the matter, but that it was surrendered into the shadow of a covenant stone of the Watchman's Tree. It can be retrieved if the 99th wink is reserved under the edict's liminal. So I'm hoping we have 30 seconds left. Actually, the safe bet here. Alright, the skill is now level 4. Its power aspects have also increased. So I use one of the plus whists. I guess I was going to do that with putrefactions and calcinations first. And then I guess it's, yeah, stolen secret or contradiction. Another fruit plucked from knowledge's tree. Improve the skill to level 4. So I'm hoping to get a bit of an inventory in terms of elements of the soul that I have available. So if I make it so that my plus whist is already exhausted, that's fine. That's easy to keep track of. Whereas if I have one of the lesser ones, it gets a little bit harder. Yep. Okay. So essentially here I know, I'll actually write this down for myself. So 10 whist, 7 core, 9 Arab, 8 fet, 7 health, 'Metal, 7 Faust, 9 Shapt, 8 Trist. Okay, so the way I see it is the safest bet that I can do would be to ensure that I have 5 of each element of the soul available, and that's going to be for the that's going to be for the salons, right? So health doesn't really count. So Faust would be a good example of this. So if I take 2 away from Faust, that lets me have a Faust plus. But the thing that's worth remembering, unless they're treated differently for the Salon, I have 5 Faust plus the Faust the plus Faust, right? So theoretically there, I could say it's like, okay, well, I go from 5 to 3. So I get... yeah, so this is actually the funny thing, is like, as long as I want to do Salons, it may be a good idea for me to just keep 2 plus Fausts and then 3 regular ones. And then when I decide that I'm done with Salons, maybe I level that up. So let's say... Now, health doesn't really get used in any of the Salons, so the real restriction on that, I guess, would be the amount of gardening that I want to do. We can do a similar argument with core, so we can do 2 core plus without any worries. Fet is an interesting one, so if we take 2 Fet plus, we can actually turn that into a 1 Fet plus plus, because we have... in that situation, we've got 4 Fet and then and then 1 remaining one. But that's going to be kind of how for the most of the next few periods, there's going to be 2 things that I try and do. One of those is going to be to read the remaining books. And in that case, like reading the remaining books, it actually is to my advantage to have lots of elements of the soul. This is why I've been slowly working on the Whist as opposed to all the other ones, because right now I'm in a case where I just completely exhaust all of the desks. I have more elements of the soul than I know what to do with. So giving up Whist isn't that big of a deal for this particular run. But once I catch up on all the various books here, being able to start folding in some of the other texts, or being able to get those marginal gains of having like a plus or a plus plus for certain things, those are going to become a bit more important than my ability to generate lots and lots of memories. And so for the next little while, I have some runway while I wait to get other guests to become parts of the Lighthouse Institute, just because there's so many high-level books, right? Like Honey, a comprehensive guide, that's no problem. We'll get through that pretty quickly. But we're at 14 and higher. So this is, again, where we're going to be spending Newman in some cases to level these things up. The 18, almost certainly, we're going to have to be using some of this stuff. So I don't expect us to finish this quickly. But that is somewhat of a benefit, because I'm also looking to read books and find out more about the Roost for one of the 3 paths that we're going to go through. But all of that will be happening in future. It's almost midnight, so let me just take a quick look at what the schedule looks like. Okay, so Monday's the 30th, so I should be able to stream for that. However, Wednesday is New Year's Day, which is a holiday in Canada, so I will not be streaming. I will stream on Monday. We'll continue this playthrough. I won't stream on Wednesday, but I should be streaming a week from now as well. I will just mention, I'm not quite sure in terms of this whole book stuff that I talked about at the beginning of the stream. I do want to kind of stream some of those, but I need to make sure that I can give myself enough time to like get the work done. So those will be infrequently and possibly only hosted on YouTube. But either way, usually Twitter's the sort of place where I announce that sort of stuff. And as for the rest, I guess I should just say thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next stream. I want to take a look. All right. Sadly, nobody else is playing Book of Hours and Cultist Simulator, so I think I'm just going to leave it there. Again, thank you everybody for watching. I will be back on Monday, and for those of you that have been enjoying the YouTube series, I will record some of those on the weekend. Until then, take care.